Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are right on the dot. Welcome to the Insurance Untangled mini summit live event. This is an event where we have some amazing speakers and a couple of awesome panels, and we're going to get into lots of interesting topic. So this is our live event, and it's a 3-hour event. You'll get CE. Of course, you have to be here for the whole time. There is a survey at the end you have to answer, and we follow all the guidelines provided by the American General Dental Association. So as long as we do everything that AGD wants, then you will get your CE. Please give us some time. It might take a week or two for us to kind of get all the paperwork done and get you the CE, but definitely within a couple of weeks, we'll get you the CE. I'm Naren Arul Raja. We started this group. I started this group with Ben, and it's a community. We have a podcast, insuranceuntangled.com. You can go there and listen to our podcast. We do quarterly events, and this is one of our quarterly events. And today, there's going to be a panel, a business panel, that's going to feature Shelly Schultz, who you will meet today. She's going to be doing two things today. One is she's going to moderate this panel, and also she's going to MC the event. So she's the one who's going to kind of introduce the speakers or the moderator for a given panel. She's the one who's going to keep us on time and make sure everything is moving forward. Plus, she's going to be moderating the panel, the business panel. The business panel, we have assembled an awesome group of experts here. Dr. Alfie, Robert Spiel, Bob Spiel, Brighton, Neil. Anyways, you're going to get to meet these wonderful people. These are friends and colleagues and people who have been in the industry for a long time. I think every single one here has been in dentistry for 20 plus years, including Shelley. So it's going to be a fun panel of people who know what they're talking about, having a very interesting conversation where you can get a lot of nuggets as you navigate this world of insurance. You can't live without insurance in some cases. So how do you navigate insurance? And at the same time, how do you hopefully reduce your dependence on insurance? So you are not, overly dependent on them. So you have more options and you can do what you want to do with your practice. Then I'll do a quick presentation. It's 4 marketing habits that will transform your dental practice. That'll be me. I'll take my experience and knowledge from the last 17 years helping dental practices and share that. Shelly, if you can jump in and add your comments here and there as I present, because you know quite a bit about dentistry and marketing, so I would love your input. And then we go to a break. That's around 10 minutes. Then we finish with our finale, which is the insurance panel. We kept the best for last. This will be moderated by Ben, and we have Tessina and Erica as the panelists. They are awesome resources. Of course, Ben is an awesome resource. Many of you know Ben. He started this group with me. Plus, he is a wealth of knowledge. More about insurance and how to work with insurance than pretty much anybody that I know. So he'll be asking some good questions, and I'm sure he might jump in with his opinions. But definitely, the star of that show is Tessina and Erica. And then finally, Ben will close with his closing remarks. We'll try to meet you again, hopefully in 3 months or so. So we'll come up with a new event, with a new set of topics. So that's it for me. Anything that I missed, Ben, that I should cover?
No, sir. I think you covered it well.
Perfect. So next is the business panel. Shelly, do you want to share the slide, or is there a slide to be shared, like to introduce people, or just jump right in?
Not that I have been given, there's not one, but I'd love to do a little bit. If we're going to jump right in, I'd love everybody to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about yourself before we launch into questions. We have Robert, Geraldine, and Brighton with us. So let's start with Robert. If you would please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Shelley. Love to. And Naren and Ben and everybody, great to be here with you. This is certainly addressing a hot topic. My name is Bob Spiel. I've been in dentistry for roughly 17 years, consulting in almost 20, and just have a really unique background. I've been in practice management, but also in the business of hiring associate dentists and helping practices that get plateaued, get off that plateau and continue to grow. My background before getting into dentistry is somewhat unique. I was actually a hospital and surgical center CEO. And so as such, have been able to see kind of the whole spectrum of the healthcare delivery system. And just have to say, I'm really grateful to be in dentistry because it's so much more fun to be here than it is to be in medicine.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Geraldine, would you like to tell us a little
Just
bit about yourself and let us know, your history and what you're doing now? Oh, sorry, Naren.
just one thing I want to add. I forgot to mention the title of the business panel, so that way everybody knows what the topic of the evening is. It's dental costs are up 40% since 2019. How do we maintain and grow profits in this new era? So your expenses are up, but how do you maintain and grow profits? And of course, as many of you know, with interest rates going up, people are tightening their belt. So that's kind of what this is all about. So keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this presentation.
Sure.
And thank you, Bob, for your introduction. I know Bob personally; he's an awesome resource. So I just wanted to say welcome, Bob, for being here and being part of this panel. I've met you like I think 15 years ago. So
Yeah, long time ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
just as we were really about starting. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So thank you for being here. So go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Naren. Back to you, Geraldine. If you would share a little bit, it is a very exciting topic, and I'm really looking forward to diving in. Without further ado.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. So I'm Geraldine Alfie. I'm a retired dentist. I practiced and owned my own practices for 25 years. Had 3 back surgeries. That's why I got out of clinical. And then went and earned my MBA. And I've been doing coaching and consulting for dental practices since 2019. I'm really passionate about helping dentists start to understand better how to run their practice as a business, because those are the skills that were not taught in dental school are business, communication, and leadership, all of which are vitally important. And for doctors who don't care about the numbers too much or don't really like to dive into them, I explain, if you want to keep doing what you love, which is doing dentistry, you need to make sure that your practice can stay open. So, you need to know the numbers. You don't have to dive into them nearly as much as people like Bob and me do, but you need to be aware of it, because otherwise you can't keep your doors open and take care of the people that you want to take care of, which is your patients and your team. So
Yep.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us today. It seems that Brighton is a little bit late, but when he joins, that's no worries at all. We'll incorporate him into the conversation. Life happens, right? That's how things.
Brighton's here, Shelley.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hang
is
on.
he?
I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Sincere
Yep, he is.
apologies.
Yeah.
I have my sincere apologies, Brighton.
You're totally fine.
There you
Yeah,
go. Well, if
and-
we're going to have a couple of errors today, we've got one out of the way.
Hey, speak and I will appear. There you go.
There you go, Brighton. My sincere apologies. Founder and CEO of Dentist Partner Pros. Would you please go ahead and introduce yourself?
And Shelley, let me just introduce Brighton real quickly. Also, Brighton happens to be my business partner.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, so
Well,
through my
I'm
career
pleasure to meet the two
of
you. Yeah.
figuring out how to hire associate dentists and work with partnerships, we started 3 years ago, and it's been a fantastic ride. And Geraldine, you're exactly right. As far as learning and being able to view your practice as a business. So I'll be quiet with that, and Brighton, take it over.
Well, Bob already said it all. He stole my thunder. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders and CEO, currently acting CEO at Dentist Partner Pros. But we specifically specialize in helping build high-performing dental teams and building great cultures in those teams so that you can maintain stability in staff. We specifically do a lot of helping with hiring, especially with hygienists and associates, and making sure that you bring on the right fits for your right team. Those all go into managing costs and how we manage this insurance world and things like that. So I'm excited to be here and to contribute to the panel today.
Awesome. Well, let's get things underway and start talking business here. So I have a series of questions, of course, and I'm gonna mix them up and kind of go around and get everybody to sort of talk in turn. And please, if you've got something to interject with somebody, by all means, let's have a fully layered conversation. I think that would be great. And starting with you, Bob, let's start with a bang and say, why do you feel that practices hit production plateaus? So what's happening there?
There's a couple of reasons, actually, Shelley, that we found that they hit production plateaus. There's both a combination of clinical skills being plateaued.
Yeah.
But what we find, honestly, more often than not, it's not so much clinical as it is that you find doctors who are successful, to use a phrase, in spite of themselves, and they get so busy that they then don't know how to manage that busyness and automatically hit a plateau because they're stuck in a corner.
Right.
Okay. And it's a fascinating kind of development. As long as I've been in dentistry, I've seen this happen over and over and over again. And Geraldine, I see you nodding your head in agreement with that. It's actually a really fun problem to help dentists solve as well, because it is
Right.
solvable.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
When you got too
It,
much of something, figuring out how to handle it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I call it kind of painting yourself into a corner.
Right.
But it's really an interesting moment, because when dentists finally reach that point, they also reach a point, many of them, of humility, and realizing that what got me there isn't going to keep me there, and therefore I have to go out and try to find answers. You know, the phrase I use is that dental school teaches you how to throw the ball, but it doesn't teach you how to play the game.
Right.
Okay. And so therefore you have to go find those who will teach you actually how to play the game successfully and win. Okay. Because it isn't something that you just pick up intuitively. There are ways
Sure.
to do it that aren't self-obvious until you finally see the solutions. And then you go, oh, wow, why didn't I think about this a long time ago?
And schools are getting a little bit better and adding some courses, but it's never going to be
Yeah.
exactly what you, right. Exactly. It's
Very
mini school
Bob
compared
and I
to
were
like-
separated at birth. At the same exact time, we both went like that.
Yeah,
You did actually.
exactly.
That was
Yeah.
well timed, well rehearsed, guys.
Yes.
Yeah, and it is good, but it's not enough, really and truly, because the focus is supposed to be dentistry, and that's what we're supposed to what is supposed to be
Yeah.
learned, right? So business
Exactly.
is secondary. However, everybody graduates, and what's the first thing we want to do, right? Yeah, so
Well,
so
and
that's
it's
very
getting
exciting.
so much, yeah, I'm sorry, Shelley. It's getting so much more complicated too, right? I mean, I've worked with doctors that have been practicing for 20, 30 years, and their overhead is spiraling. They can't really get a pulse on why that's happening. And it's because of all the things that they need to implement to deliver excellent care, because that's what patients are expecting and demanding. And their fees can't keep up with what their cost
Right.
increase is. And
Right.
the team costs are spiraling out of control. I throw up in my mouth every time I talk to one of my clients about what people are demanding for an hourly wage, with
Yeah.
zero incentive for them to prove themselves. And the doctors don't think about the fact when they hire a team that I'm giving you an hourly wage or a salary based off of what value you're going to add to my practice.
Right.
And there need to be metrics in place that people are, we use a scorecard in a lot of my practices. And if they hit their number, then great. You have proven your value. You take part in an incentive program if we have one in place.
Excuse me.
If you don't, we need to have a discussion about it. And they often will not think about what that person brings to the table as their character. I always tell doctors, 80% you hire for character, 20% for skills. For the last 20 years I was practicing, I very rarely hired somebody in dentistry when it came to admin or assisting. In Illinois, we didn't have to have licensed assistants. So I could hire the best, receptionist that I found at a hotel, who had amazing customer service skills, who had a very high EQ, who could pivot and make every client experience unique and personal. And that's what keeps your patients coming back. I was fee for service, insurance independent for 21 of the 25 years that I practiced. And patients that value that, there is always a place for those types of practices. You don't
Right.
have to have a specialty practice either, because I have 3 clients who are general practices that are 100% fee for service now.
Mhm.
And they're in smaller towns. I've got one in the city as well. And it's doable. You don't have to only do implants or only do cosmetics or only do sleep. You can do it, but you
and-
have to get your team on board.
Patients
Right.
are
And
teachable. Yeah.
And Geraldine, if I can just interject, and Brighton, please join in. I would dare say then, of those clients that are succeeding in that that spectrum, that they have also picked up the mantle of leadership
Mhm.
and realize that their number one job, honestly, is to lead and build a really effective team. Because when that takes place, magic happens in a practice. But it's fascinating. I actually wrote a book on small business leadership about 7 years ago called Flip Your Focus, and have taught a course for Gordon Christensen for about as long on the subject of practice leadership. But it's not a subject that many doctors walk into, because the clinical scratches the itch, that they have. And
Yeah.
so they keep wanting that itch scratched, but it's not the clinical that is going to take that practice up to the next level. Because literally, and Geraldine, you'll agree with this, they have to learn to make their team their hands and their team their representatives.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And
So,
most people most doctors look at their staff as the biggest expense,
right.
and it's flipping that to view them as their biggest investment.
Right, exactly. And it's a mind shift for sure.
It
And so
is completely. Yeah.
so then leading into that, when we're looking at building teams and, getting to that plateau and breaking out of the plateau, what's the first thing that everybody automatically thinks of is hiring an associate, right? So where do you, and how do you get to those signs? Do you guys feel, Brighton, perhaps we'll start with you on this one.
Sure.
Where do you feel those signs come in that it's time to bring in that associate?
Yeah, great question. There's really two things to look at. You have both the emotional state of the doctor and then
Right.
also the physical like numbers side of the practice. So
Yeah.
if you are a doctor practice owner who is starting to not enjoy going to work and you're starting to feel that burnout, you're starting to practice what we like to call drive-by dentistry, meaning
Yeah.
you know that there's probably more work in that mouth, but you don't want to put it on the schedule. You're not sure where you're going to find time for that. So you're sprinting from one patient to the next and you're starting to let things slip by, right? So you're not performing at the peak level. You're not providing the care that you want. And a result, you're not really pleased with emotionally how you're showing up in the workplace, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so there's that side of it. And as long as you've kind of got some great systems in place and you're cooking with gas, if you will, then there's some numbers that you can tell if that's actually true. So if you're a solo GP practice, you're going to want to be producing anywhere from about 1.5 up to 2. And that includes hygiene. So that's total production. And then there's some other things to look at. How many new patients are we bringing in on average per month? We typically look at a minimum of 25 average new patients per month.
Yep.
And then you're also going to want to look at, do I have the capacity to bring on another doctor? Do I actually have the physical space? And if I don't, how creative and willing am I to sacrifice on schedule? Do I need to open up hours? Do I need to add more team members? So those are all things to consider when you're thinking, okay, do I need to just bring on an associate? I wish it was as easy as that. It's like, yeah, let's go ahead and post an ad. We'll have a new person in here next week. It doesn't work that way. And then a lot of people rush the process and they end up bringing in the wrong person at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And that is way too expensive to just go at it willy-nilly, if you will.
For sure,
So.
absolutely. And then so then what are some tips, Bob, Gerald, and Bob first, perhaps, that you have for finding that right person, right? So as Brighton said, you can't just put an ad in and have somebody that's going to basically partner with you arriving next week. So what are some tips that you have for looking for that right person?
To us, the biggest tip is to be able to understand who's going to fit in that practice.
Right.
All right, what are the characteristics that Geraldine brought up? 80% character, 20% capability. I don't know if that same balances with finding an associate, but that character is first. And so it's interesting that we actually, in our business, we come up with what we call the characteristics of the ideal candidate.
Mm-hmm.
We will interview the team, disc survey, all the leaders, and really be able to understand the culture, which is kind of a fascinating exercise because most people don't really know what their culture is, until somebody says, oh, this is what your practice is all
They'll say,
about.
I don't have one, but you
Yeah.
definitely
Oh,
do.
you
Yeah.
do. And it's always a reflection of the primary leader or leaders is what
Yeah.
we found. All right. And we're not going to change that, but we want to adapt to it and find that person who's going to be the right fit. Okay. So think of us like Match.com, and doctors can do that as well. Okay.
Associate.com.
Well, that's kind of what we're doing, to be honest with you. Okay.
Oh, great.
Because once we've got those characteristics in place, and again, a doctor can do this. Okay, it's easier with a third party because they're kind of separated from it. They can see it more objectively, but it's knowing who's going to fit, writing an ad that's going to then attract that type of person, then having the skills to be able to vet and know who's in and who's out.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
I
makes
mean,
sense.
in a nutshell, that's what it takes. And I don't mean to be self-promotional, but that's what we love to do because we've seen the train wrecks that happen when it's done wrong. Okay. And we've also seen the magic that happens when it's done right. And the funny thing is, there's really nothing in between. Okay.
For sure.
Either
Yeah,
it's magic or it's a train wreck.
for sure.
Okay. In the end.
And repairing that can be extremely, it can take longer
It-
than people
and
would ever imagine.
usually
Yeah.
you don't repair. Usually they just separate. You know,
Yeah.
75% of the time, associate dentists leave within a year, which is a
For sure, and then
staggering
you've got to repair
statistic.
the practice,
And
right?
exactly, yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
from what
because it was
happens.
done
So
wrong, it was rushed into, it wasn't done thoroughly, or sometimes there's also the scenario where the practice, frankly, isn't quite ready
yeah,
because they don't have their house quite in order first to be able to bring somebody in. You don't want to bring somebody into chaos. Let me put it that way. All
it takes
right.
patience. Yep, it takes
Yeah.
patience.
Takes patience, and you've got to really kind of have your practice humming, maybe not ideally, but at least structured in a way that you know how you could bring this person in and they're not just going to be thrown in.
It for
Okay.
sure. Yeah. And to that, Geraldine, we found the right person. You know, we've made, perhaps we've involved an outside agency. Maybe we figured out how to do it on our own. So then we're onboarding them. Do you have any keys for success for that onboarding?
Do it for one thing.
Yes.
Yes, not
You know,
just walk
You
in
mean
and
you
hand
mean
them a chair.
just to
Here's the
throw them a
chair and
chair
here's
and a
your
schedule
assistant.
and
Go.
say good
Yeah.
luck? Come on,
Yeah.
Geraldine, that's
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah, you know what to do. Just go do it. Go take care of my
Exactly.
patient.
Exactly.
You have a license.
The
Go.
Steri Center is to the left.
Yeah. Oh, they never walk in there. That's the assistants.
Fair enough.
But it's interesting because I have the two practices right now that have a relatively new associate, and I'm just really glad that I could be part of this with them because I've helped them understand that you had an associate before and it didn't work out. Why do you think that happened? And it wasn't that it wasn't necessarily the right associate. It wasn't necessarily that it wasn't a good person or a good dentist. But as we've talked about, I always say you need to be crystal clear on what your core values are for you and your practice.
Oh.
If that person does not match your core values, they are not the right person. I don't care if they produced $7 million last year. They don't have the same drive that you do. That makes your
Exactly.
practice unique. And
Exactly.
they will kill your culture if you let them, or they're
Yeah.
going to struggle and it's going to turn into, as Bob said, a train wreck or a bloodbath. So once you've found that right person and making sure that you spend enough time with them before the contract is introduced, right? When you're interviewing for any position in the practice, but especially for the associate, this is dating. Okay. Would you marry someone after going out on one date with them? No. So you interview them first. I want to learn as much as I can about that person. If they, get me a little excited, then I have them come back. Now I want them to be excited about what their potential is in my practice. Then I want them to spend time with their team, with my team, because the team always picks up things that the doctor misses because it's more emotional for us. And they ask different questions, and any interviewee lets down their guard a bit when it's not the boss asking the question. So there are times my team would have red flags that I missed on interviews. And I trusted my team, and I'm not going to screw up our culture for this person. So once they're in place, you need to have documented onboarding process for that. If, I don't care how many years that associate has been practicing, I want to ensure that we have a weekly meeting where it's at least an hour and we are spending half of the time discussing clinical cases and half of the time helping them develop their leadership skills and letting them get to start to understand how the business is run, right? I always struggle when I have clients who don't want to be transparent about their numbers to their team. Now, there are things that the team does not need to, nor should know. Your P&L, your balance sheet, your cash flow statement, that's your private business, but they do need to understand how profitable is the practice, what's our overhead, where can we be more efficient, how can we help improve our production and collections, how can we help drive in new patients. Every team member has to understand that. And the associate doctor needs to know that I will help you build your practice within my practice, but you're responsible for this too. So let me bring you to networking events. And as Bob was mentioning with disc profiling, I've been a proponent of disc profiling for gazillions of years. I just did a podcast with Provide on it. And sometimes it's really hard, but the doctor has to understand that sometimes the best candidate is the person who is 100% opposite of you. As long as they share your core values, but their personality profile is different, you just double the number of patients that you can each take better care of because they fit your natural personality. And so it's not something that people naturally do. They don't like to be around people that are different from them, but sometimes that's the best thing that you can do. If you've got a doctor who's a real high DC, they're just go-getter and they're just facts, man. And you get a doctor in there that's a high IS, great. They're going to be the warm, cushy, wonderful person. Like, let them see all your new patients because they're the ones that are going to connect with them. And then when you have somebody who needs you to be the doctor, then great. The owner doctor can see those people, or you can, morph in between. And if someone's got a high enough EQ, they know how to read that person within about 2 to 3 minutes and shift.
Yeah.
And so, but you have to train that associate doctor in all of those soft skills because the clinical will come with time. And so I don't know about Bob and Bright, but when people ask me, who am I looking for an ideal client? I always say, I want someone who's been out at least 3 to 5 years. It takes you that long to figure out how not to kill your patient. It takes you that long enough how to figure out, I can block no matter who it is, but I will get it on the first try. You're not stressing about the dentistry as much. And you're starting to get piqued by what interests you. And you're starting to specialize within your practice about what kind of things really excite me, that I want to do more, that I want to get my team trained on. Now, the entrepreneurial dentist understands, I don't know squat about how to run this as a business. I don't know squat about how not to be a friend to my team. I need to be a leader to my team, especially for female dentists. That's a hard thing for us to swallow.
That is a very hard thing to swallow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to communicate with my team or patients. So go ahead, Brighton.
Yep.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, not at all.
No, I just wanted to piggyback really off. Just your very first point was to have a plan. I can't tell you how many practices that we've met with and they had a failed associateship. We talked to their team like we didn't even know we were hiring one until they showed up day one. Right. And so that happens. It happens often. And so having a really crystal clear plan is really important. I thought you hit on a few great points. Weekly meetings. We found something that's really helpful too is to have a third party come in and kind of what we call it is marriage counseling. I mean, we really are. We're teaching them how to communicate with each other, teaching them how to work together, teaching them how to solve problems together, teaching them how to work with the team. And so one of the things that we recommend is that first day or ideally before someone comes on board, have an all hands on deck meeting, everyone, including your new doctor, and lay out the ground rules. How do we talk to each other? How are we going to solve problems when they come up? What's going to happen when someone makes a mistake? What are we going to do about that? And be really proactive about that plan. So I just think it's really, really important that you have a proactive, intentional plan. And then if you have a newer doctor coming in, make sure everybody's on the same page as far as what's expected clinically and how we're going to work off those training wheels and start to get them busy. How many columns are we starting with? What procedures are we going to put on their calendar? All that needs to be really crystal clear. And so that can get overwhelming, especially if you've never done it before. So if you are in that boat and you want help, sounds like Geraldine can help you, or we have our associate onboarding system at Dentist Partner Pros too. That's exactly what we do. So.
Yeah, well, you can't measure success if you don't have anything to measure against, right? So how do you know you're being successful? So I think that's
exactly
a really
right.
good segue, marriage counseling. So taking that and moving into partnerships, right? So that's another way for growth, or that might be how we started out. So when we move into partnerships, how do we keep them together? How do we communicate across with that partner? How do we make sure that we're on the same page when we go in and not end up in that disastrous divorce nightmare that we've all seen too many times?
Yeah, that's another great question. I'll take the first crack at it. So it's something interesting to know is that 50% of dental partnerships fail within 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's just something that we let happen to us and we don't proactively try to prevent. Typically when partnerships first form, there's that honeymoon phase. Everybody's all excited. There's nothing anyone can do wrong. And then what starts to happen is just like if you're, married, not in a business relationship, the little things, they didn't clean up. They didn't do this procedure this way. They didn't show up to this meeting at this time. And we let those things slip and slip and slip. And eventually it builds this huge form of animosity.
They're not wearing a lab coat. They're just in scrubs.
Whatever it is, it's just those little things.
Yeah.
And eventually those little things start to turn into big things. And they turn molehills, quickly turn into mountains. And next thing you know, we can't even look at each other. We don't want to talk to each other. And we show up, do our work, leave, and we can't wait to get out of this. And so what we have found is to prevent that is consistently meeting and talking through problems.
Communicate.
and I know doctors and practice owners hate meetings and they don't want to sit together. They don't want to talk about problems, but you have to do it. minimally, you should go to dinner, go to lunch once a month. Have a list where you can provide feedback. What's going well? Hey, what's not going well? And how can we work better together? I promise you, if you just do that, your partnership's going to turn out so much better. It'll be so much long lasting. And as a result, your practice is going to thrive, and you'll be able to really see a lot more success. But that's just one little tip.
Feels so simple, right? Talk to each other. It feels so
Yeah,
simple.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
we don't.
Sometimes in these marriage counseling calls, Brighton and I afterwards look at each other like, well, duh. All we did was just help party A and party B finally talk to each other. And there's like one client that we hired somebody for about 6 or 7 months ago. And at first it was really good. Honeymoon was great. She was busy. Practice had excess capacity. Everything sounded great. And all of a sudden the capacity started to get lower and lower and lower. And it was kind of like, well, gee, she's not doing this and she's not doing that. And, we're not sure if this is going to work. So he finally said, well, why don't we have a marriage counseling call? Let's sit down and talk. And through that hour of time, it was like, bam, we were back together. And I just got a text from the doctor 2 days ago saying everything's on track. She's getting busy, and the partnership is continuing on. It's just having the Brighton uses the phrase lean in.
Yeah.
Lean into that danger. I know 80% of dentists really try to avoid what they view as conflict, okay, because of their personality style. But to learn that actually isn't helping solve the problem, it's just making the problem harder. Okay, lean in. And there's some really easy questions that can be asked that aren't confrontational, just discussionary, and can lead to a really warm, rich conversation that can come up with solutions. Geraldine, come on.
Yeah.
Your turn. What have you found?
Gonna lean over there and ask.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
so
I see you nodding your head, so I know we're on the same page.
well, the first practice that I owned, I was co-owner. I had a partner,
Okay.
and we had a great partnership. I was really lucky. We just sort of naturally divvied up the responsibilities, right? So he was like the CFO, and I was like the COO/head of HR. So when there were team issues, I was the final say on it. When there were financial issues, he was the final say. And you have to have operating agreements in place. You can't just have your partnership contract. You have to have operating agreements about who's the final say on this, that, and the other thing. Who's the managing partner? You have to treat it like a business, right? This is what they do in Fortune 500 companies. Not everybody is responsible and accountable for the same thing. Otherwise, no one's accountable. So when we have a disagreement about something, who's the final say on it? And the other person has to be okay with that. The same as in a marriage, right? You have compromises where one spouse wants to do this, the other doesn't. And if you are looking at what is for the greater good of the business, and maybe it's not in my best interest, but it's in the best interest of the business, you have to have both of you saying, yes, we agree to this, that I might not want this for myself, but I know that in the long run, it's the best thing for our business, which means that it is the best thing for myself in the long run.
Yeah,
And
that's insightful. Yeah.
yeah, and we met twice every other week. We met for
Mhm.
breakfast before we started on a Tuesday morning, and this little greasy spoon near our practice. And we met for a full hour and a half, because if you're going to have a meeting over food, you have to give yourself an extra half an hour, because you're not as productive. I don't like meetings when they do lunch meetings. When I have teams that are trying to do meetings, you can chow down your food in like 5 to 10 minutes. I used to bring a smoothie every single day for work for lunch, because I could suck that down in 3 minutes, floss my teeth, brush, and be ready. So, that was how I dealt with it. But you have to do that, and you have to have an agenda. The reason that people hate meetings is because nothing ever gets done.
Exactly.
It is a bitch session where you're rehashing all the stuff from 2 weeks prior. That is not the purpose of the meeting. The purpose of the meeting is to solve issues. And so you have to go into this with, it doesn't have to be a formal thing, but you have to have an agenda in place where, the first 10 minutes, we're reviewing all the numbers. We're going through, I call it the 4 practice pillars in my coaching, where there's systems, there's people, there's marketing, and there's finance. We cover each of those 4 pillars, what's on track, what's not. And then whatever's not on track is what we spend the next 30 to 40 minutes discussing. What's the number one thing that we need to work on in the next 2 weeks to make this go away forever? And then the last, and we use the same format when we're doing our team meetings, which we used to have biweekly team meetings. And then we would have a long quarterly meeting for a full day. And in the last 10 minutes of our hourly bi-weekly meeting with our team, we had one team member, it rotated throughout. They would discuss a great customer service experience they had in another business and a lousy customer service experience they had in another business. And then we would talk about how can we implement the great thing that happened? You know, maybe they had a great experience at a restaurant. What made it that great? How can we translate that into what we do with our patients? What was the lousy thing? What do we all promise and commit never to do? So that none of our patients ever walks away and says, that was, you know, oh my gosh, it was the worst dental experience I ever had. Yeah, I was numb. Yeah, I didn't feel anything, but you know, they didn't tell me how much it was going to be before I got in there. And then they expected me to whip out my credit card and pay them $5,000. And I couldn't get another appointment within a time period that was realistic. So, you know, you have to have a reason for meeting. And again, you have to check your ego at the door, because there were things that my partner did much better than I did. And there were like one or two things I did better than him. He was better than I was. But that's the whole purpose, you know. The phrase I heard years ago, which I absolutely love, which is a rut is a grave with the ends kicked out. You know, you need to make sure that you surround yourself with people that are excited by change. And that's hard to do in a dental practice, because dentists in general and dental team members usually avoid change. And whenever I would have a new person come on, I would say, the one constant in my practice is change. You have to be really comfortable with that. I will navigate it for you. I will tell you the why. I will give you the blueprint to follow, but you have to know that whatever we're doing today, it's going to be slightly different in 6 months, because that's the only way we improve. I don't care about how much better we're doing than other people. What I want to do is be better than we are today.
Yeah, extremely. And it's interesting, and a big common theme that I think that we're really pulling out today is communication. Let people know what they're doing, why they're doing it, bring them on board, so that we're working towards the same goals, right? And we're not, you know, the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. So we've talked about two
So
different.
Shelley, let me add on top of that.
100%,
Though,
yeah, please.
communication preceded by clarity.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
And communication that facilitates clarity.
Not just
all right?
just for the sake of talking. Correct.
Exactly. You know, and I love Geraldine's point about, you know, operating agreements and what we call presiding doctor responsibilities. Who's responsible for what? You know, and who has what, and then using a cadence of accountability through meetings. I heard 6 months ago, and I thought, duh, why not? I thought of this, that meetings are the cost of teamwork. Okay, if they're effective meetings, and that's why most people don't like them, is because they just, as you say, they're gripe sessions, and we're just spinning our wheels. We're talking. How often I hear practices saying we're talking about the same things, you know, and if somebody's saying, okay, what type of meeting, you know, agenda could I have? We love the book Traction by Gino Wickman.
Yep.
All right, you know, and they've got a very clear meeting agenda in there. It's all about how can you create this culture of teamwork within your practice. And I'd overlay that with my book Flip Your Focus, which really just defines as a leader, how do you gain the mindset, and then also 3 key skill sets to then implement that type of culture that Wickman talks about.
For sure. And that agenda itself has to become a living document, right? It's not something that
completely
in between.
Exactly.
You've got to keep that updated. If you think of something on Wednesday that you want to talk about on Friday, write it down on Wednesday so that you remember to talk about it on Friday. Yeah. Let's slide over to insurance. Let's start talking a little bit about insurance. I wanted to hit on DSOs. That'll have to be next time. So let's move over to insurance a little bit. And how are we going to move away from insurance, right? We have those ideal practices. We have, you know, that everybody's coming in and they're non-insurance patients, non-assignment patients. How do we get there, right? And we're based on demographics. We're based on, you know, who's around us, what's around us, what part of the city we're in. So what advice do you guys have for let's start with Brighton, actually, for moving away from that insurance? What kind of conversation can I have with my patient to help them understand why we're doing this and how it might benefit them even?
Yeah, well, I mean, Ben is going to be speaking later this afternoon, and he's really the most qualified person to be answering this question. But based on what we've learned from him is making sure that we have a plan and we know exactly who and how many people are under each insurance that we're working with. And so it's not saying, hey, we're going to go one day, I'm done with insurance. Let's quit. I can't do this anymore. Let's drop them all. That's not going to work, right? We need to have a really intentional plan and starting to figure out, okay, you know, this insurance provider, they're only 5% of our patient base. Let's start working through those ones. Let's start dropping those ones off. Okay, then the next big chunk and the next big chunk and the next big chunk. And slowly over time, you can start to work through this process. But I think at least we talk to a lot of practice owners that think, oh, I just can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm just going to start dropping it. And they're going to think in 6 months, I'm going to be fee for service and totally crushing it. It takes sometimes years to go
It
through
does
that
take
process.
years. Yes.
And you'll always end
it-
up with a certain percentage that's going to be insurance, there's no 100%.
There might be in some rural areas and other places, you
Fair
know,
enough.
but
Fair
if you're
enough.
in a metro area, no. I mean, just to give you an example, and kudos to Ben for this, because this is a large client of mine that we've co-consulted with for years. Okay. And to fast forward, they dropped Delta January 1st of this year. Okay. And they were 33% of their total 9,000 patient base. All right. You talk about a pucker factor. Okay. But because of Ben's coaching, and that coaching had actually started like 6 or 7 years ago when they first, to Brighton's comment, dropped MetLife. Okay. And it was a small portion of it. And one of the best things that he taught me at the time, and I helped implement this, is you have to bring the team into the why. Okay. Let them set that up so that they understand, A, we're making a stand for quality. But B, if we continue with these cut rate carriers, we can't continue to take care of patients the way that our culture mandates that we do. So you start small, kind of like with training wheels, and you teach them, okay, this is how we're going to have these conversations, and here's why. And the phrase I use is we turn it into a righteous cause. Okay. There's this burning fire inside the team of, you know what, they're actually stripping money away from this practice. They're taking money out of my pocket, okay, because they have this plan that only pays 55 cents on the dollar. Now, fast forward, we did that a few times. Delta was this huge gorilla. You know, they tried negotiating with them, didn't work. After a 7-year hiatus of 0 raises, they came back with a 1% raise. Okay. For a practice that is like the leading practice in their area.
Right.
Well, with Ben's coaching, then he said, you know what, guys, we're going to do this, but we're going to do it right. So we started the conversation 9 months into it with patients saying, we're thinking about doing this to Delta patients. Here's why. We'd like to know your opinion about it. And that discussion went on in hygiene for about 4 months.
Wow.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we had another team meeting, Geraldine's point, you know, this is a great practice. It's led really well. And we could all see the writing on the wall. We were going to make this change. By the way, create some dummy codes in your practice management system. So when you have that conversation, the hygienist or front office can code that patient and know, were they in favor or not in favor? Okay, that's a fascinating thing that Ben recommended. So we started having those discussions next and about, you know, it looks like we're going to because they're not working with us. Well, eventually January 1, we sent in the letter to Delta. Lo and behold, we've kept about half of those patients, okay? But their collections rate has gone up from a 75% collections to production ratio now to an 85 collections to production ratio.
Right.
They're not as busy and they're only $100,000 away from catching up to where they were last year, where they were running, and never felt like they could catch a break because they
really
finally
has
made
affected the
it's
entire
been
practice. Yeah, and it must be
in a positive way. But
Yeah.
again, clarity and communication, you know, maybe a theme for today.
Yeah.
They had clarity, they knew the plan, they communicated the plan to everybody, and then they stuck with the plan once the decision was made.
And of course, any kind of practice can switch to fee to service. Would you like to talk about that, Geraldine? Like you
Please. Love to hear about your
beginning.
clients that are
So
doing
we talked
that.
a little bit about at the very beginning about the differences between a GP practice and a specialist practice. So you know, can any kind of practice be this way?
Sure. So as I said, I was owner of two completely different types of practices. One was a large general practice in New England in a rural area. That was my first one that I was partnering. And then when I moved to Chicago, I built from scratch my last practice, which was a cosmetic practice. But it was my original practice that we went insurance independent, fee for service
Okay.
in a rural area where there were a lot of people that had, you know, various dental benefit company benefits. And we did it the wrong way. So I always
Okay.
joke with my clients, and when I'm doing this for webinars, et cetera, I'm like, I know how not to do it. And I learned from it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was a painful learning experience. But we did not implode our practice, but I will tell you, there were sleepless nights. You know, we did the knee jerk. Oh my gosh, I'm so sick of this. I think simultaneously, my partner and I were on the phone with some idiot adjuster telling me that I should have done a 17 surface MODBL PQRST 5-pin amalgam instead of doing an onlay. And I, of course, came back with my snarky, oh, I'm sorry, when did you graduate dental school? And, you know, we kind of simultaneously slammed the phone down, looked at each other, we're like, this stinks.
We're
And made the
done.
decision, we dropped it.
Yeah.
No notice, you know, whatever. We had an exodus of patients.
Yeah.
Because we had a huge number that had some sort of insurance benefit. And luckily, 6 to 7 months later, when they had gone somewhere else and experienced not the same quality, we had a number of them come back. So our practice survived and we ended up thriving, and it was, you know, lucky for us. And so what both Ben and Brighton have talked about is the fact that Bob and Brighton have talked about is that you have to have a plan in place and you need to be patient. You know, when I have doctors that are ready to just throw caution to the wind and drop them all, I say, doctor, you need to think about it this way. When you have a patient that comes in who hasn't seen the dentist in 10 years, they've got perio, they've got broken teeth, they've got TMJ issues, and they tell you, I want to have a beautiful smile for my wedding in a month. Is that a realistic goal? Of course not. Why would I ever say that? Okay, you're taking a broken patient. That's your practice right now with all this insurance. And you think that in a month, you're going to be healthy. Ain't going to happen. Okay, you need to have a realistic timeline based off of how many insurances you're in network with, based off of the percentage of production that's driven by those people, based off of the amount that you're forced to write off every single month. But you need to get a realistic time frame in your head, and it's going to be 2 to 3 years if you are in network with more than 3 companies. And if
Mhm.
Delta is one of them,
Mhm.
okay? Delta in general is usually the last one that I get my clients out of, because it, as Bob had said, the 5,000-pound smelly hairy gorilla in the room.
And they are
And
1/3 of the total insurance volume of patients. So they are that gorilla.
yes,
They know that they're the gorilla, and well, there's a whole lot we could say about it, but
and
yes.
they're cultural criminals because, you know, they were started by dentists. So
Yeah,
like
they are.
they better never get into a ring with me because I am going Sicilian on them. I mean, it's just, but you know, whatever. I
Yeah.
can't change what they do.
We'll do that for
But
the next quarterly summit.
yeah. So we'll sell it on pay-per-view. But you know, for all the practices that I have now that are out, you know, it was when Bob had said communication and clarity, and I would say cohesiveness too, right?
Mhm.
I have all my practices go through an exercise where we get the limiting beliefs out of their heads onto paper, as they say in traction. I also love traction along
Right,
with you
yeah.
guys. And I say, okay, what are all the limiting beliefs you have about how important insurance is to the health of your practice? And we get them all out. And then I say, okay, which one of these can you pick 1 or 2 that supports the culture of your practice? And not one of them is. And I say, okay, now we need to turn the page. And what are the empowering beliefs about why your best patients choose you? Insurance is almost never one of those reasons.
Right.
It is because you provide personalized care. You are up on your CE. You have the best technology. You have the best trained team. You make every single person feel like a VIP, no matter what they're coming in for. You're accessible. You are friendly. You are warm. You have a beautiful facility, like on and on and on and on and on. You have to make sure that there is at least 2 to 3 more empowering beliefs that they truly do subscribe to, so that they can start to outweigh the limiting beliefs and have them
Exactly.
start to, because by this point also, I've usually been working with a team for at least a year. And so they do understand the numbers because I do go through overhead with them. I do let them understand what's the cost of an hour in your practice. And so they do start to understand, hey, you know what? If you guys aren't bringing in 100% or 95% of what you're producing, you're never going to make a bonus. You're never going to get a raise. And so these companies are taking money out of your pocket.
Yep.
And it's sometimes better to have a 0 person in your chair than someone that's costing you money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is a hard pill for
Well,
people to swallow.
So Geraldine, to use example of this client that Ben and I worked with, literally, because large GP practice, their overhead level was creeping up to 67%. Delta was paying them 55 cents on the dollar.
Mhm.
And so every Delta patient was actually costing the practice 10 cents,
Mhm.
you know? And the good news is, in losing half the Delta patients, they've been able to replace all of them
Mhm.
with better paying patients, you know?
Yep.
And Shelley, I just add this as well. If anybody's really fascinated by this, and I know Ben will speak about this. By the way, Geraldine, you can call me Ben all day long. I'm just the naked Ben, the hairless Ben. Okay. Because he's one of the smartest guys in all of dentistry, you know. But I love this one exercise that I try to take clients through, and that is, I want you to take your top 25 fees, your UCRs, and add them up as if they were billed one time. Okay. And then take all your contracted fees one by one and put them in a column and add them up as if they were billed once. And then you divide each one into your UCR number, and you can see the weighted average discount you're getting from every one of these. And the clarity that creates in a doctor's mind when that finally happens is nuclear,
Mhm.
because they suddenly look at what is actually what they felt, you know, because they hate seeing these adjustments happen. Okay. It's like they're being robbed, really.
They are.
But now they know
Yeah, I was just
why and who is robbing them. And that puts in the fire in their belly about no more. Now, how do we create a plan to start to get rid of this one and this one? And you start at the lowest to the highest. And you're right, Geraldine, in 2-3 years' time, you can, if you've got that practice that is exceptional in every other way, you can step away from insurance and get your life back.
So we've got 8 minutes left. It's been, honestly, thank you guys so
This
much.
has been so
Like,
fun.
we could go on for a really
We
long
could,
time.
yeah.
Seriously.
We'll
Really
meet
and
in another
truly.
room.
We were right.
Yes.
But I
We'll do a
think
breakout.
that one thing that we're really a common thread, really, I mean, we talked about communication, we've talked about KPIs, which is a way of measuring things for those that don't know. We've talked about those kinds of things, and really, I'm sensing that it kind of boils down to culture, really and truly, and hiring those right people. And we've alluded to that. You're hiring 80%, you know, personality. I can teach you the rest kind of thing. You know, when we have our front desk, we want somebody that's all smiles and making the patients really, really happy. Let's talk a little bit about how we build that culture and how we hire those people. We've got a fairly short time, and that is a massive, massive subject. But a couple of key takeaways I think would be fantastic. Brighton, do you have anything that you'd like to address on that?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought it back, because I remember Naren said the question and the theme of this panel was that costs are up 40% since
Exactly.
2019, right?
What
How
do
do
you
we
do about it?
maintain, grow profits in this new era?
Yeah.
And I mean, we've talked about dropping insurance, and that's obviously a huge, huge thing, and we're going to keep diving into that. But one of the areas that I don't think gets enough attention is how do we make our team the most effective and amazing team we possibly can? It
Exactly.
costs you way, way more to find another team member and train them to have the right people on the bus doing the best possible work. Okay.
Yeah. Aces
And
in
so
the
I think,
plate.
yeah, so I think that's why that's been such a theme today, is because if we can create a culture that makes the best A players want to work for us,
Yep.
that will largely and hugely impact both your quality of practice, the money you're making, but also your quality of life. When you're in the practice, you're going to be so much happier. You're going to be so much more relieved. Like Bob said earlier, you're going to be able to trust them as if they were your own hands.
Yep.
Okay. And when you can get to that point, man, it is freeing. It opens you up to feel like, okay, I can start to bring in, you know, if you start to expand and add another doctor, you can finally take that vacation that you haven't been able to take for 10, 15 years without losing 20, 30 grand because you had to close the office for a week. right?
That level of trust, right? You're completely right. Like it allows you the freedom to be able to say, well, I can get excited about X, Y, or Z because I know that that person is going to take care of X and I can do Y.
Yes. Yeah, it
Exactly.
opens
Yeah.
up so many things for you. And when you start to bring on that team and you start to make them effective, you may not have to, I mean, you're going to naturally raise your rates, you're going to do all those things, but when you have a really, really effective and proficient team, it's like clockwork, man. You are humming, it is working well. Your patients are happy, they're saying yes. All those things start to happen, and it's often neglected because it requires change in the owner.
Yeah.
It's not something you can just go to a CE course, learn how to do something different. It is something that you have to change inside of yourself as the owner in order to create a culture that's worth being around.
So what, Bob, then picking up on that, would you say are a couple of things that we need to do when we look inwards at ourselves that you know, to realize, and maybe ways that could foster that growth within a person?
Yeah, thanks, Shelley. To be candid, the first thing an owner has to do, and this is really hard, and sometimes it takes a third party to help facilitate it,
Yeah.
is to hold a mirror up to yourself and ask, what do I love about my culture?
Yeah.
And what do I hate?
Yeah.
Okay. And then realize I'm the cause of both. Okay.
Yeah.
Culture is in a small business in particular, but also in a large business. Even our country, culture is a reflection of the leader or leaders. All right. And if you can take what you love, then you look at the weaknesses that you've got, and it takes humility to be able to pull this off. Okay. But find a coach who can help you begin to address those blind sides. We all have them. All right. But every champion knows that you've got to have a coach to be able to address those blind sides and effectively and over time begin to correct them. Okay.
Tom Brady's not Tom Brady without Belichick.
Yeah, exactly. You know, he's not. Okay. I mean, I will say that there are certain breakthrough moments that can happen. Okay. Like the course that I've taught for Dr. Christensen, just to be able to help doctors step back and see, okay, where am I? Where do I want to go? Who do I want to bring? And then what does it really mean to lead? Because there's a big question mark about that. How do I actually lead my team? Here's the funny thing. It's not as hard as it looks, or let me put it, it's not as hard as it sounds. Okay. But it does take a shift in mindset. And the mindset shift is to realize it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about them.
That's
Okay.
right.
That effective leaders know that my job is to see that my team succeeds.
That's
And
right.
if you can
We
take that mindset,
up. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You know, the traditional leadership paradigm is this pyramid,
Yeah.
and the thought that, you know, the leader, everybody is there to see that the leader succeeds. Okay. And why I titled my book Flip Your Focus is you got to turn that around inside yourself and realize, no, my job is to see that they succeed.
Yeah.
Because if that happens, the success goes up exponentially and the enjoyment goes up exponentially. And then you just learn, listen, I've got to create a sense of ownership with my group, okay, with clear expectations and accountability. Then I've got to model appreciation and thanks and feeding that human spirit and letting people know how much they mean to you, okay? And then let them start to own the success of the practice, the problem solving of the practice, and their own responsibilities. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Before we move over to Naren, we've got a couple of minutes, Gerald, and if we can, I'd like to wrap up with you. And I believe this is the first time you've joined us. Thank you very much for that. If I'm incorrect, I apologize, but I think it is.
Right.
Thank you very much. I would like to leave it with you to wrap. I think that everybody that's listening would absolutely love to hire all three of you, but your time is finite. Geraldine, do you have any suggestions for how people would start to find that coach? What are a couple of pieces of advice that you'd say, like a couple of key things that you want to look for? Because there's all kinds of people that put up a consultant sign. How do you find a good one?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kelly. I always tell any potential lead when I'm first meeting with them, I'm not going to tell you anything that anybody else is going to tell you. You know, the systems work because the systems work. They've been around for hundreds of years for a reason.
Yep.
So the most important thing is that you have to be with somebody that you can trust implicitly. It's the same as when you're picking a psychiatrist, right? If you can't bare your soul, you're never going to get better. And I'm never here to judge. And I know that Bob and Brighton aren't either, right? We're not here to judge. We're here to help you uncover what is
Exactly.
causing you pain. And you have to be with somebody that can, I always tell people, I will not always tell you what you want to hear, but I will always tell you what you need to hear. And when Bob was talking about the mirror, I use that analogy all the time. I worked with a coach myself for the first, starting 5 years out of dental school until I retired, and worked with a life coach in addition to a business coach. And, you know, it was my first coach who held up what I call the ugly mirror.
Yep.
When I was complaining about the same junk every single time, after about 6 months, she finally felt that I trusted her enough that she could have that difficult discussion with me. And this is way before we had Zoom, right? So she said, Geraldine, we're on an actual phone call with the coach.
Yep.
And Geraldine, picture that I'm holding up a mirror. Everything that you're complaining about, what's the one common factor? And I am, what? Who's behind me? Oh yeah, that would be me.
Right.
And so, but you have to be with somebody that can have that difficult conversation with you and take it in the spirit it's intended, which is that I wouldn't be giving you feedback if I didn't value you. And I
Right.
didn't know that you had better potential. I have
Yeah.
high expectations for myself and for you. And I know that you can fulfill them. And, you know, I'm here to, I'm sometimes your cheerleader. I'm sometimes your, you know, possibly you might think your worst enemy. I'm sometimes the priest. I'm sometimes the shrink. I'm sometimes, you know, the favorite aunt. Sometimes I'm the demanding mother. There's a whole bunch of roles that you have to wear, you know, different hats you have to wear. And it's figuring out who you can be comfortable and vulnerable enough with that we can work together so that you can reach your maximum potential.
Yes.
And if I
Thank
could just add, I know we need to be done, so this will be super
that's
fast.
okay. No worries.
Is I know we've painted a picture that we are the problem, and the amazing thing is that it's all solvable.
Yeah.
Is that if you are watching this, you are capable of changing. You are capable of solving the problems. You are capable of dealing with all the stuff that you're dealing with. And sometimes it just really, you need to find that person to come in, like Charlie needed, to tell you, hey, this is what's wrong. Here's your blind spot. Let's shine some light on that, and you can change. So just know that you can. There's solvable problems, and that everyone is capable of building an amazing, successful practice.
What a
And
positive
Shelley,
to end on. I
and-
love that.
and-
Go ahead. Go
and
ahead.
Shelley,
Bob.
let me just add with this one thought.
Yeah.
You do this, you've DSO proofed your practice.
You know, that's a real, you're completely correct, right?
Okay.
Because that's an area that we didn't have time to touch on.
No, we
in
didn't,
this-
but
this
that
one.
literally is what you've
It's sort
done.
of the third type of ownership, if we want to. And that's, you know, it really does tie together, because these are the things that you need to do to make sure that you're going to stay out of that if that's what you wish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you very much, everyone. We're going to move over now to Naren. Take care, everybody. I hope that you guys can hang around for the rest of the event today.
You bet. Thank you.
Bye-bye. And now we'll
Thanks so
look
much.
for Naren, who I believe should be joining us very shortly here, and he's going to give us a presentation. It's going to be a marketing presentation for habits that will transform your dental practice. So Naren, you're very welcome anytime that you would like to pop in and join us here.
Hey everyone, can you see me?
Hi, Naren.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Really appreciate it.
problem.
So I'm going to share my screen and jump right in. 1 second. Yes, the topic I'll be talking about today is 4 marketing habits that transform your dental practice. Can everyone see me and hear my voice?
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us. It's going to be around 40 minutes. And just a little bit about myself. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I run a company called Equa Marketing. We started the insurance Untangled community. So thank you for being part of the community and, joining our events and listening to our podcasts. We'll put some links to some of the podcasts I host in case you are interested in any of those topics, whether it's reducing insurance dependence or thriving dentist. You can sign up for the podcast. That's just... It's a weekly podcast. We try to provide useful information on a regular basis. I also want to introduce Shelley here. Shelley has 20 years of experience in dentistry. Prior to working with Equa, she had worked with some software companies. So she helped practices implement practice management systems. Like how do you transition from one environment to the other? So she has lots of experience with dentistry. So Shelley, why don't you say a couple of words?
Sure. Yeah, I've been in the industry for quite a while, working with compliance and regulations and all that fun stuff, which I actually do find to be a lot of fun. And I'm really looking forward to diving more into the marketing side. Technology has always been super important to me, and I'm an agent of change. I love change, and I have a dramatic amount of experience with change management. And I think that that's one of the things that I'm able to bring to the table is working with people and getting them to understand how change can really truly benefit things around them.
Thank you, Shelley. So if you have any comments, feel free to jump in. I'll keep going, but if
Sure,
you
will do,
have
Naren.
any
Thanks.
points, then go for it. The topic today is, like you saw, it's 4 marketing habits, right? So that's kind of where we're going to focus on 4 marketing habits. Instead of trying to kind of, go in depth, I wanted to give you a high level overview of some key things that can make a difference. You're here, you're trying to get some value. So I want to kind of leave a few things with you that hopefully you remember, take notes, and follow up on. That'll make a big difference in your practice. And those 4 habits are mastering Google reviews. We'll get into this more, but pretty much every one of you should do this. I would recommend everyone should try to get 10 reviews a month. Collecting and sharing cases. Again, every one of you should do this. I'll talk about how to do it and why it's important. And I do think you need to understand digital marketing, your different options, the pros and cons, what to use when, because I see a lot of practices wasting, tens of thousands of dollars doing marketing, but not necessarily going anywhere. Like they kind of go in circles, they're just doing things, but it's not really making a difference. And finally, I want to talk about influence, like how do you get patients to say yes, whether it's on the website or whether it's in person. And that's important because if you're spending, let's say, a certain amount of money to drive new patients, now you don't really know influence, and the amount of results you get from those patients might be a lot less. So that's why I think influence is important. So I do have a question that I want everyone to just jump in and chime in, like share your notes, share your answers on chat. Have you noticed any specific online strategies that worked specifically well for your practice? So just share your answers on chat, like, okay, SEO worked for me, or, this worked for me, that worked for me. So just share what works for you. And if you haven't really had any luck, that's fine too. You can say, I really haven't had serious success with any kind of online marketing strategies. Shelley, if you see any answers, if you can just, I'll look at the answers as well. If you notice anything, just let me know. And we'll give everyone like a minute or two.
Thank you. Yep, you got it.
Why don't I keep going? And then if you find something, we'll take a small break and then we'll come back and we'll comment on it if there's any interesting feedback. Actually, I do see. So somebody said they do online after appointment surveys. That's a great tip. It's a great way to get Google reviews, or get good testimonials by using surveys. The key point that I would make there is try to do it as close to when the patient is at your office. So in other words, the best time to do it is when they're in your office. Why? When they go home or when they are on to their next thing, you no longer are their hero. You no longer at the center of their thought process. So the chances of them writing a good review and then actually writing a review itself goes down significantly if it happens 2-3 hours later. So try to do it when they're at the office. Anyways, if you have other comments, we'll look at it and comment on it. The power of marketing in dentistry. So effective marketing is a cornerstone for attracting new patients and growing a practice. And this is an area where, practices have a long way to improve. And having done this for 17 years, a few things I notice is like most practices usually are not happy with their marketing firms, at least for long. So usually they try somebody for a year or so, and then they go to the next one. Because part of the problem is a lot of people don't understand what is marketing and how to kind of make it work for you. So either they are on the PPO trap where you're giving up half of what you make to the insurance companies in terms of like the difference between your usual and customary fees versus what you actually end up collecting. And the reason there's such a big difference, like, let's say you are producing, collecting $1 million, you're more than likely producing $1.5 million. I'm talking about a fully PPO dependent practice. Why? Because the PPO controls how much you can charge, and also they don't give you the full fee. So you have to, take the hit in terms of the difference between your UCR versus what you actually get from the insurance company. So PPO is also a marketing fee, but just like PPO is not a very effective marketing fee, there are a lot of other ineffective marketing, marketing categories as well. So we're going to get into that a little bit today.
I think too, Naren, to jump in there, if you if you are doing that and moving from one marketing agency to another, you lose that consistency that you need to build in marketing. So you're never really carrying the same message right across, which in and of itself is going to create failure in your marketing.
Absolutely. I think this is unfortunate, like where sometimes marketing companies pander to their clients, meaning just give them what the client wants.
You want
It's
to
like
hear it?
me going to an oncologist and not listening to the oncologist, but rather telling the oncologist, how much, what he should do, and what dosage I need and how many treatments I have. That's not a smart way to go, because like that oncologist has probably treated hundreds of thousands of people like me. That oncologist has a lot of training and special education on how to do and what to do. Like I actually literally have a friend of mine. He's an oncologist, and he just talks about, like, there are 3 different types of oncologists. They work together. He does certain kind of cases, somebody else does certain kinds of cases, and they work as a team. I mean, there's so much that goes into like deciding how to get the outcomes that you're looking for. What mix of treatment, who's taking a lead, who's taking a backseat.
Yeah.
It's a great team sport, right? And it's amazing. And like he works at one of the best oncology centers, at least in Canada. So of course, he saves lives all day long, every single day, and he loves it. He's 65 years old. He works 50 hours a week. He loves what he does.
Yeah,
But
there you go. Well, that's what we all strive for. Yeah.
yeah, so that's key, right? So a lot of times the challenge that I find with doctors is doctors are leaders, right? You own your practice, you tell everybody what to do. But when it comes to marketing, you may not know how to think about it. So if you don't know how to think about it, you might be driving somewhere, but it's unfortunately the wrong place, your wrong destination. You might end up at a forest somewhere without electricity and food or anything.
I found it interesting over the years watching when a dentist themselves, they are professionals. But now it's time to bring in another professional, right? And let you focus on what you do the best and let them focus on what they do the best.
Right.
That's why that
100%.
oncologist calls in 3 other people.
Yeah, even
Right.
oncologist
Even
doesn't
they
feel like
call
he knows
somebody in.
everything.
Yeah.
He needs the other experts. Like, okay, if it's chemo, he will take a lead. If
Exactly.
it's something else,
Well, and then
someone
within
is gonna-
dentistry itself, if you're working with prostho and you're working with other specialists along the way. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into the habits. The first habit is mastering Google reviews. So what does that mean? This is something all of you can do. I know you teach your clients, your patients to brush their teeth, especially let's say you have young patients, young children. Let's say you have a pediatric practice. One of the things you do, religiously is, make sure that those little patients cultivate good habits, right? So you insist on, what they need to do, and you talk to the parents about it. You even reward them. You like stick, you create that good habit with your patients, with your children, with your young patients. So same way, I think getting 10 or more Google reviews must be a habit that every one of you here has to cultivate. I don't want to hear, well, it's too hard. I mean, I'm sure even my 2 daughters, when they were young, they said, oh, it's too hard to brush my teeth. I don't want to do it. We all have reasons, like we don't want to do certain things, right? Especially new habits. Same way, you will get a lot of pushback from your team. Oh, my patients are different. It's hard. It doesn't work, etc., etc. But getting 10 Google reviews a month must be like a non-negotiable. It's like there's no ifs, there's no buts. The good news is I have seen at least 60-70% of practices really master this goal of getting 10 or more Google reviews a month and doing well with it. So many dental practices that I look at today, if I were to go to their Google review page, I'll see hundreds of reviews, 200, 300, 400, 500, many 4.5 to 5 stars, especially the practices that are much more patient focused. Obviously a DSO like a mill practice, doesn't care, right? Because, it's like today you see this doctor, tomorrow you see some other doctor. There's no consistency, there's no relationship. They don't care, the patients don't care. They're just coming there because that's their last option. But a private practice owned by one of you, more than likely you care, and you do provide good quality dentistry. So one of the things I would recommend is it's not just good enough to provide good service, but also you need to figure out a way to get those reviews on a consistent basis. And we'll get into that in a bit. Second habit we are going to talk about is collecting and sharing cases. This is really important if you want to expand your dentistry. So instead of just doing, general, basic, everyday dentistry, if you want to expand, for two reasons. One, obviously, it's more fun and more fulfilling because it requires advanced training, a lot of experience, and a lot of you love certain types of cases. I'm not saying you're going to love every type of case. Some might be more gravitating towards implants versus others might love endodontics. So whatever your interests are, lean in. So if you are leaning in, but you're not getting enough new patients, then what's the point? Like you spend $50,000 getting special training, but you don't have any patients to treat. So you want to grow that. So one of the ways you can help yourself grow that is to start sharing these stories, like to start with
Every patient wants to know what they're going to go through, what the outcome's going to be. They want to hear what somebody else had to say. And, it's been almost beleaguered that our customers, patients in this case, are more educated than ever before and have the capability to look all this stuff up. So they're going to, and you're completely correct. If they're going to see really wonderful success stories, that's going to build their image of your practice.
Absolutely. So like, for example, we work with clients and some clients do really, really well with SEO. So I Google, implants 25 different ways. They're always at the top. But then when I go to that page, I don't see any examples of the cases they have done. So
Exactly.
as a patient, now I start having doubts. Are they really an expert? Do they really know what, are they going to be the best choice for me? Because I don't see any proof of what they have done. So continue to create that habit, just like Google reviews, the habit of collecting and sharing those cases.
Yep.
One tidbit is try to get the full face picture. Really, 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 really important, especially the after picture. Remember, you're not competing with other dentists. And a lot of dentists don't realize that, or they don't think of it when they do these cases, because they're thinking, oh, I just need to show my capabilities as a dentist, and they do the close-ups. And another dentist will appreciate that. But an average patient who hasn't gone to dental school has no idea what it is.
Different audience, yeah.
Yeah. But when I see a beautiful smile, I get it. I wanted to buy that car. I also want a beautiful smile. Now, remember, you're competing not just with dentists, you're competing with that car that's $30,000. Now they're like, okay, I'm going to invest in my smile, spend that $30,000 because I'm going to enjoy my smile for the next 20 years of my life. Yep. So it's better than a car purchase because, car, I'll only use it for 5 years. And here, like, I get a new me for 20 years. So work on that. That's really important. The next habit we're going to get into is understand and pay attention to digital marketing. I won't talk about it right now. We'll get into more depth on it when we get to that page. Finally, mastering and practicing influence. Again, I have a couple of things I want to talk about, and I'll get into that shortly. So let's start with Google reviews, right? So this is what an amazing in a Google review page looks like. By the way, this is our Google review page. So we grab those reviews and we feature it on our website. We do this for our clients. So it's not only good to just get reviews, but you also need to then grab those reviews as is with the logo of Google and the name of the person who wrote the review and then feature it on your website. Why? Because when you're on your website, you want to make it easy for them to trust you. So if they have to now go back to Google and find your reviews and it's hard for them to find it, and in the middle of that, they get a phone call and they forget about it. And now you lose that person who was very keen on wanting to work with you. So not only should you get the reviews, but you should also make sure those reviews are easily available on your website for others to see. So consistent review collection and management can substantially impact a practice's reputation and patient inflow. And this is kind of something that I have learned in 17 years as an entrepreneur. I mean, I didn't go to business school. I didn't know how to build a business. So I made a lot of mistakes, like many of you perhaps did when you first started your practice. And one of the things I learned is it's not about how good you are or how good what you do is. It's can you do it consistently? I mean, when you do a crown prep, can you do it consistently? Same thing with, this habit of collecting and sharing reviews. So have a plan. I'm going to get 10 reviews a month. Have a plan. All those reviews are going to show up on my website on the relevant pages. So, and then make sure it's happening, right? Because if as the owner, you don't make sure it's happening, maybe it works for 2 weeks or 2 months, and then everything goes,
Have a plan and
everything goes
track the
backward.
plan. Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Shelley?
I said, have a plan and track that plan.
Yeah,
Yeah. As
100%.
we talked about in the previous segment, if you don't
Yeah.
have goals that you're striving for and measuring those goals, it kind of is pointless.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Strategies to get 10 plus Google reviews. Now let's get into some nuts and bolts. So start with the goal, right? The goal is we will get 10 reviews a month, 5-star Google reviews a month. And ideally, many of those reviews should be paragraph reviews. Set that goal. Again, you set it with your team. Now, if you have been averaging 0, then maybe start with 5. But 10, I think, is a very doable target for pretty much every one of you here. Only exception could be a startup, right? Because you may not have enough patients to get 10. But outside of startups, anybody who has been in practice for a year or two, you need to, at the very least, aim for 10 reviews a month. So start by setting a goal. Second, implement a review system. And there are 2 ways to do this. A lot of dentists, outsource this. So they'll just use an automated system to send out messages to people at the end of the day and asking for a review. My experience is you don't get reviews, or even if you do get them, you get just no word reviews, meaning they'll just give you some stars, but they don't explain why they gave you the stars. And the reason is, like I said, when they go home, same day at night or next day, you are not at the top of mind. Something else is. So they more than likely won't do it. But even if they do, they won't spend more than like 1 second, which is like click the stars, they're done. Those reviews are not really useful. Like Google doesn't really value those reviews. It doesn't rank you better for those reviews. Even patients don't value those reviews. If they can choose between somebody who has love letter reviews, many of them, versus somebody who has like no word reviews, they're going to obviously go with the love letter reviews. And also, I know from algorithms, you'll get like 3, 4, 5 times when you have these love letter reviews in terms of traffic from Google. So implement a review system. Encourage patients to leave a review, perhaps through a follow-up email or text messages. That is like your default, but ideally have a game plan to like get 2 reviews a day. So in your morning huddle, have a champion. His or her job is to identify 2 people and then say, okay, who is going to ask for the review? Okay, maybe the hygienist, maybe the assistant, maybe the doctor. So, getting those reviews on a consistent basis is really important. And then at the next morning, the same champion says, hey, I know yesterday we were going to ask, Jenny and John for reviews. What happened? I know our hygienist was going to ask Jenny, and dental assistant was going to ask John. So what happened? So obviously now you can just continue doing that. And before you know it, you'll get 10 reviews a month. And most of these reviews are going to be like love letter reviews because they're in the office. They're really appreciative. They're really, thankful for being there. So again, like I said, assign a champion, ask for reviews, and achieve the goals. Now let's talk about collecting and sharing cases. So this is really important. Showcasing high value cases. So, look at this. I love this full face picture, like the beautiful smile, because like I kind of like the close up, but as you can see, as an average person, I don't understand why this is something that's worth $30,000. I love, a full face smile, a beautiful smile. And I'm like, people can get it. They understand that, yes, that new smile is definitely worth $20,000, $30,000. So now they're sold like in 2 seconds. So I know I see a lot of practices even today really focusing on close-ups. So I'm not saying don't include your close-up in your cases. So if you have 4 pictures, 2 could be close-ups and 2 could be full face. Now, you may not be lucky getting, the before close-up, before full face, because people don't want others to see, how bad their smile was. So that's fine. Just focus on the after close-up. So now you showcase the beautiful smile you created for them. and put it on the relevant page. So for example, if you have a case where you did veneers and crowns, it should both be on the veneer page and the crown page. So once you're ranking on Google and people go to those pages, you want those people to fall in love with you. So many practices do not fully leverage their high value cases in their marketing. Strategies to effectively showcase your cases. Again, set a goal, start with one case a month. And a tip here is, you probably have a day or a few hours every week to work on the business. Sometimes you sign checks, sometimes you have meetings, etc. Allocate 30 minutes to an hour to work on things like cases. So every week, if that day is Friday at 10 a.m., at 10 a.m. to 10:30 or 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., you just go and look at all your old cases. You get them organized, you send it to your marketing company, do the write-up. So you say, okay, here is the case, here are the 3 pictures, here is the write-up, this is what happened, this is why the patient came to me, this is what I did. And finally, the 3rd bullet point, how did the patient feel about this? Obviously, the pictures will do the talking, but the words really provide some color and context. Obviously, get patient's consent. The best time to get consent is before you start the work, not after the fact. Why? Because you can say something like, I want to do my best work. And the patient is like, thank you. I'm going to ask you for one favor. Can I use this and showcase as one of my best work? Nobody's going to say no. Like, I mean, imagine, put yourself on the customer's shoes. You want to do a kitchen and the person is asking you, hey, I want to do my best work. Do you mind if I showcase, again, I'm not going to show your house, but just the pictures of the kitchen so that I can show it to others. And people are like, absolutely, anytime, right? So same way, most people have no problem you showing their beautiful smile, the full face smile, but you just get that permission up front before you start the work. And I have found with this particular approach, you won't have any problems getting consent from patients. Now, if you try to do it after the fact, now it's hard. Now, like, they have no reason, like they already have a beautiful smile. Now it's no longer something they need or want. And like I talked about, doing those write-ups, they're really important, like, 3 bullet points. So, and you need to have a title too. So, okay, this is veneers and crowns. This is, implants, veneers, and, teeth whitening. So whatever it is, you could just mention that in the title. Now, these cases also could be showcased on your social media, but definitely showcase it on your website. The problem with social media is, I'll get into this in a minute, unless you are an influencer and you have a huge following. I'm talking, 30, 40, 50,000, ideally 100,000 followers, then you don't really control social media. It's the other way around. Once in a while, 3 people will see this, 4 people will see that. So, it doesn't work. So I would recommend, not depending on social media as much, but do post it, but don't depend on it. Like, your website should be your showcase, your website, which you completely own, you control it. Social media companies don't control it. Should be where you really showcase all your cases in the relevant pages. So yes, have a gallery, but definitely put it in the relevant pages. Understand and pay attention to digital marketing. This is really important. And Shelley, I would love for you to jump in as needed here. So how does digital marketing help? So this is key, right? There are different ways you can drive new patients: SEO, search engine optimization, Google Ads, free social media. So SEO is free Google, so similar to free social media, and then Google Ads, and then social media ads, 4 buckets. 95% of the patients today come through digital marketing. So they come through one of these 4 methods. So you need to know how much is each method costing you. So have some type of tracking, call tracking, lead tracking. That way you can compare apples to apples. Okay, you are getting 100 phone calls and it's costing you $1,000. So a call is costing you $10. Some other method.
Aaron, it's stunning how few practices track those metrics. They'll have a marketing company or somebody's brother's uncle that put everything together. And brother's uncle was pretty funny, by the way. That would be your uncle. they'll have somebody that's put things together, and then it's left to the side. And people will say, why isn't it working? Well, you have to pay attention for anything to work in your business. And it's amazing how few people know what their numbers are per month for their traffic, for how many patients they're getting, for those kinds of details.
Absolutely. So the channels I see are Google Ads, social media, free, and social media ads. So find out what's the cost of a new client or a lead through SEO versus Google Ads. If you can't answer that, you can't control your marketing. You can't drive your marketing.
Right. You don't know where to put the gas.
Exactly. So Google Ads, Google SEO. So what is the cost? What are the benefits? And what is the effectiveness? So the cost is, this is the lowest cost of everything. It's 20% the cost of Google Ads, and probably 10% the cost of social media ads, and 3% the cost of PPO plans. I mean, literally 3%. So you will spend 33 times more in marketing fees, the invisible marketing fees, if you are PPO dependent. So if you are PPO dependent, you are spending 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 in the form of adjustments, which is a marketing fee every single month. So make sure that slowly but surely you are reducing your dependence on PPO plans, and hopefully depending more and more on digital marketing. But within digital marketing, SEO is the lowest cost one.
Shifting so that you're self-guided and you get to choose the path in front of you.
Exactly. What are some of the benefits? It improves practice visibility in organic search. Once established, it continues to attract traffic. So this is a huge benefit. Like, unlike other types of marketing, like especially the ads type marketing, you don't have to keep paying money. Like what you did last year will help you this year. So if you spent, $1,000 a month last year, and you got, let's say, 10 patients a month, right, at the end of last year, by the end of this year, you should be getting 17 patients a month. Why? Because the marketing that was done last year is now helping the marketing you're doing this year. So in other words, you are now sitting on top of 2 years worth of marketing, which is collectively helping you. So typically what I find is over time, the results you get continue to get better and better. It might be growing at a slow clip, but definitely it grows. On the other hand, things like ads, it's the opposite. It gets more and more expensive. Why? These companies have to, show more profits to their shareholders. And one of the ways they do that is charge you more for the ads, whether it's pay-per-click or whether it's a social media ad. The challenge here is only 5% of you will be successful with this, because 5% get 95% of the free traffic. So if you are in that 5%, you have a huge advantage. The key is, it'll take at least a year, which is again a challenge to get to that 5%. You have to do a lot of work, around 500 hours worth of marketing has to go in. But typically at the end of the year one, if everything is done properly, you will be in the top 5%. You will rank for 100 keywords. So those are the downsides. It'll take a year, a lot of work, and somebody has to do that work. I mean, I guess, like they say, there's nothing that is, there's always something, fine print. So this is the fine print. It's a lot of work, and only the 5% get all the benefit.
And patients trust organic SEO more than they do a paid ad, just period, across for anything, whether it's a patient, any product. If you think about yourself looking, do you want to click on the one that says ad, or do you want to go to the one that comes to the top of the organic search? Really and truly, your trust is going to go to the organic search.
Yeah, 100%, because it's an ad, right? We all know an ad is an ad is an ad. So, and we know that anybody can buy an ad. They don't even check if you're a dentist, to see if you're running a dental
Almost no effort, right? Yeah.
they don't care. Anybody who's willing to give them money and puts a credit card, the ad will run in 2 minutes. So people get it. People know that. I mean, the same reason why most of us don't even watch ads, on TV programs. And in the old days when we had TV, we would TiVo it. We won't even, we'll skip the ads. So ads typically are ignored by most people. And even if they do click on it, just because the ad was so compelling, they are coming in with, what's the catch? What's wrong with this? Because they know that it's not.
There's a sale here somewhere. What is it?
Yeah. What is it? Like, what is the catch? There's some kind of a trick here. That's the way they're coming in. By the way, if anybody is looking for a book, I read this in a book club. Read the book called Scout's Mindset. And what the book is arguing is most of us are biased. So for example, if you are somebody is being accused of a crime, and now they are the defendant, you're going to try to, everything that's happening, you will see it through the lens of the defense, right? On the other hand, if you are the prosecutor, you are the victim, you are somebody is the victim. Now everything that's happening in that courtroom, you're going to see it through the lens of the victim, right? Same way.
We'll get you to put the name of the book in the chat when the presentation's complete, Naren.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Thank
you. It's a great book. It's just nothing to do with marketing, but I felt like understanding that. So the people same way, like when they click on an ad, they're coming with this perspective that maybe there's something wrong here, maybe there's a catch here. So just keep that in mind. So that's Google SEO. How can you position your website in the top 5? So this is like the 6 things as top 5%. Remember I said 95% of the traffic goes to the top 5% of websites. So these are the 6 things that Google cares about. NAP consistency, name, address, and phone number. So improve your ranking in local search results, making it easier for patients to find you. This is really, really important. There are hundreds of directories, example, Yelp, City Search, Facebook, even Google My Business. They are all directories where your name, address, and phone number is listed. The key is it has to be consistent. Like, for example,
Identical.
if you write life smiles as 2 words in some places and 1 word in one place, that's wrong. That means you have
Or Lifestyles Limited or LLC or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Same thing with address, right? Suite versus STE versus number sign. It has to be consistent. The problem is doctors go to school to do medicine and that's what they do. And they don't really focus on these details that are kind of hurting them. So without even realizing it, somebody who's, with half the qualifications and half the experience is doing so much better because he or she is focusing on NAP and somebody on their behalf is taking care of it. It's a lot
And
of work.
easy to happen if you have, any turnover in your administration whatsoever. It can be listed very easily differently by the different person who typed it into a different thing. It's easier to happen than people think.
Yeah, and also what happens in the internet is things get copied. So in other words, you may have only put it once, or somebody may have put it once. Even your patients can type in your business name incorrectly. Like let's say they're on a platform where there's no profile. So the company says, who did you go see? So they thought, okay, your business is, with an, doesn't have the LLC or does have the LLC incorrectly. Now they type in your name incorrectly. Now all of a sudden, your name is incorrect on that platform. Now some other platform copies that platform. Now the other platform that copied the platform with the incorrect information has the same incorrect. So it's like it spreads. Like because remember in the old days, the Yellow Page company rep would call you and say, "Hey, I have your name as this and this. Is this correct?" You're like, "Yeah, it's correct." Now they don't do that. I mean, there are hundreds of these, and they don't make enough money to have an army of people calling and verifying. So there's a lot of inconsistency. You need to have a team focused on finding these issues and fixing them.
Yeah, and it's important to note it can be fixed. It's not too late. You can fix it.
100%. And then you can get better. Like it's not like, oh, you only need to take care of 4 sites. It's better to take care of 45 sites because each one of them will help you drive traffic and phone calls. Plus, each one of them, will help with SEO.
Mm-hmm.
So here is the example, right? We talked about the way you write live smiles, it could be 1 word or 2 words. Again, the address, here they have written BLVD for Boulevard. They could have spelled it out. Suite, they have written STE. It doesn't matter how you write it, it has to be consistent. Same thing.
And as with everything in marketing, it's a living, breathing thing, right? So
yeah.
It needs to be fed and this needs to be checked regularly. Your love letters need to be checked. All of it is an ongoing process. It's not set and forget.
100%. So here are some love letter reviews that we got, and we definitely feature them on our website. And like I said, you should do the same thing on your website. The next thing that's really critical for Google is Lighthouse score. I'm not going to go through all 6. I'm just going to pick a few. Google gives a score for every single page, a score of 0 to 100. And somebody has to pay attention to it. Typically, they are the webmasters. They are the webmasters of your website. They have to pay attention to it on a weekly, monthly basis. And anytime your score drops, they have to go and do what Google tells them to do to get the score up again. So again, you have to be getting close to 90 in all 5 areas. Now, the way SEO works is just like getting into dental school. If you do really well in all the things that the dental school cares about, like GPA, your interview, your entrance exam, etc., then there's a good chance you will get in. Same thing here. If you do really well in Lighthouse score, NAP, all these things that Google cares about, then you will be in the top 5%. The tricky part for us, I guess, is unlike dental school, you'll get in once. Here, you have to get in every day. Every day, Google can kick you out. Just because you ranked yesterday doesn't mean you're going to rank today. And it's in Google's interest to kick you out because the minute they kick you out, now you'll go and buy ads from them, pay them 5 times more money. And hey, that's how Google makes $237 billion. So you can't blame them. I mean, it's capitalism at its finest. So they'll always keep trying to kick you out. So you have to stay on top of it. Original content, really important. This is the #1 reason practices never rank. Most content in dentistry today is duplicate. So the way most marketing companies work is they have a library of content. So they'll have 10 or 15 or 20 articles, and then they change the name. So they'll take one doctor's name and replace it with your name. So now the same article is given to you and it has your name on it. So that's called custom content. Now, Google doesn't like it because remember, Google doesn't want to give you free traffic anyway. So when they see that entire article is not 95% original, meaning out of 100 words, 5 words could be repeated or copied or similar to words in other websites, but 95 of the 100 words has to be original, So this is where a lot of people kind of, go to Google jail and don't rank at all. So when Shelly and our team looks at this as part of the marketing review, we find it at least 80% of the time. Now, Google has actually updated its standards recently, and now they are looking for people who are using ChatGPT to create content, and now they're penalizing them. Again, you go to jail anytime you use any kind of AI to create content. So now Google is calling their content human-first content, meaning they will favor humans. That means if you used any kind of AI to write content, you get put into Google jail. So focus on the way we handle it is we have writers, they write articles the way Google wants, meets all its criteria, and then we keep adding to it every month. Every month we're adding new articles. So your content library, your content that's driving SEO continues to grow.
And
Plus,
it's very interesting there, Naren, because a lot of people never would associate the content that they're putting. The brain goes to, I want to educate my patient first, and not really thinking about where we rank on Google SEO for it. So, the tie is something that takes a bit to get over and realize.
Right. Google Ads, the costs, like I said, is at least 5 times more than SEO. Now, the downside with SEO is it'll take a year. Google Ads, pretty much it'll start running right away, even though it's a lot more expensive. So typically, I wouldn't recommend Google Ads. And in my experience, having done this for 17 years, the people who benefit from Google Ads are in 2 buckets. Startups, because the way they rationalize it is, okay, instead of paying $1 million to buy a practice with 2,000 patients, I'm willing to spend $200 a new patient and get those 2,000 patients, and it'll only cost me $400,000. So they are like, okay, $400,000 is a lot of money, but it's still cheaper than, $1 million. But obviously, when you buy a practice, you're also getting cash flow, you're getting all the leasehold improvements, you're getting a proven team. So there are other reasons why that practice is $1 million, not just the fact that they have 2,000 patients. So startup practices are good use case for Google Ads. The other time is like you might have some profitable services where, let's say, the profit is $5,000. So you might say, okay, I don't mind spending $1,000 to get a patient who will, give me a profit of $5,000. Totally makes sense, even though $1,000 is a lot, but in the context of $5,000 profit, it might make sense. So those are the 2 places I would use Google Ads. But because Google Ads is so expensive, you better have your act together. So if the way you answer the phone call is not optimized, if you're not tracking all your data, then it's very easy to lose a lot of money and not benefit from it. Because remember, it's a lot more expensive. So your landing pages have to be amazing, your phone experience has to be amazing, and use it strategically in those 2 cases. So if you want to learn about SEO, and I'll let Shelly chime in. What she does is she would spend few hours looking at your website, your marketing in the context of your competition, and look at, are you ranking? The first thing she looks at is, okay, what keywords are you ranking for? How many keywords? If you are like crushing it, if you're ranking for tons of keywords, she's like, keep doing what you're doing. You don't change a thing. If you're not, then she'll come back and say, then she'll do a deeper dive. So you'll say, okay, why is this particular website not in the top 5%? Then the answer might be, oh, their NAP is a big problem, or their original content is a big problem, or their Google Lighthouse score is an issue. So whatever the issues are, she will clearly point it out with data and examples. So now you know where you stand. So now that you know where you stand, the next step is, if we were to do your marketing, what would the first 12 months look like? How would we work on the things that are critical to get you into that top 5%? So that's like a roadmap, a plan. she will share that. So whether you work with us or whether you work with somebody else, I think it's a great use of your time, hour of your time, to kind of find out, how you can come up with a marketing plan that will give you success in 2024 and 2025. This is the link. We'll put it on chat, equa.com/ShellyMSM. And you can talk to Shelly. She, like we mentioned, she has 20 years of experience. So you can also talk to her about dentistry and business of dentistry and all kinds of other things. Any other comments, Shelly?
I look forward to chatting with people. It's a lot of fun. I really love learning about different practices and how they differ. And it's like everything else. Everybody's just that slightly bit different. And I'm really happy that our firm is able to cater to everybody at the level that they require and desire.
And this is our gift to you. So no catch. You don't work with us,
yeah.
no problem. You don't have to pay us. It's our gift to you. So I think we're giving away 5 of these. And also, I think the first 5 people who do end up becoming clients, after talking to Shelly, there's a $250 savings for month 1 and month 2. So that's an additional thing for the first 5 people who book a meeting with Shelly.
And that brings us to break, Naren, believe
Yes.
it or not. But let's go through the next couple and go 2 minutes over.
Yeah.
And I think we'll still be okay for starting the next part of the session.
Yes. So I'll just go through a couple of quick
Thank you.
slides. So I'll talk about influence real quick. So I think that's the 4th part of my presentation. So influence is all about getting people to say yes, right? And the father of influence is Dr. Robert Cialdini. He wrote a book called Influence in the 80s. And then since he wrote a book called Persuasion, he's, I would argue, the marketing person all of you need to read. Like, if you understand Dr. Cialdini, you know a lot about marketing and getting people to do what you want them to do. I've used this in marketing. I've used this as a parent. I've used this as a husband, as a friend, to get people to kind of influence them to do certain things. So it's very, very powerful. So there are 7 principles of influence. I'm just going to touch on 5 of them because these 5 are the most relevant ones in dentistry. And what Dr. Cialdini said is, first, you need to know what these principles are. Second, you need to use them to create a moment. In that moment, people are 3 times more likely to say yes. Therefore, third, you need to use that moment to get that yes. In other words, if you don't use that moment, doesn't matter what you did up until this point, you are not going to get the yes you want. So understand the principle and create the moment, and then use that moment to get a yes. So the principles are commitment, social proof, authority, liking, and reciprocity. So these are the 5 principles I'm going to just touch on. Commitment is all about, getting people to do things. For example, one of the areas where you would use commitment is no-shows. So, you can have them read out the date and time of the appointment. You can, remind them and ask them reconfirm an appointment. So every time they read out the name and time of the appointment, or when they reconfirm, they're committing to the appointment. So the chance of them showing up goes up significantly. So if you don't do these things, you might have a no-show issue. I'm just giving you a tip. Second, reciprocity. We tend to do things for people who do things for us, right? Simple. I invite Shelly for my birthday. She's going to invite me for her birthday, So we tend to, I'm nice to her. She's going to be nice to me. So we as humans tend to, like, give to those who give to us, right? I mean, I get a Christmas card, I'll send a Christmas card, same thing. So when somebody is appreciating you in the office, like, for example, you might be interested in their life. So you ask about their pet or something that's important to them, whether it's their child or their gardening or their travels. And now they really appreciate the fact subconsciously that you care about them and you asked about what's important to them. And then you ask about how they feel about your practice. What do you think they're going to say? They're going to say wonderful things. Why? Because they just appreciate how kind and nice, how caring you were. And they're going to do the same thing. They're going to be caring towards you. They're going to think of reasons why your practice is great and tell it to you. Great time to ask for a review. So when they tell you why they love your practice, that's when you ask for the review. And that's how you get the love letter review. So reciprocity is a great way to get, again, Shelly is a genius. So if you want to get into more details, I would definitely ping her on this. Social proof, we don't like to take risk. Social proof, which are Google reviews, kind of cuts that risk for us. I don't need to talk to 17 patients of yours to decide I'm going to become a patient. I can quickly go to your Google page, Google review page, see that you have 250 reviews and many of them are love letter reviews and you have 4.7 stars. I'm in, right? I'm sold. I didn't have to spend 3 hours, trying to vet you. So it's a great way to vet people today. And that's what social proof is. So these are some examples. I don't want to take up more time from the other guests, and I know also we have to go for a break. So that's it from me.
Thank you, Darren. Hello, Ben.
Well, good afternoon. Hi, Shelley.
How are you doing today?
Excellent, thank you. And you?
I'm doing extremely well. Friday the 13th, I just realized a minute ago.
Uh-oh.
I must be on the ball because it's well into the day.
It's interesting that when there's a full moon or Friday the 13th, the ERs everywhere kind of get flooded at night.
It is. It's really like, maybe like, is it the power of suggestion, perhaps? Or is
Probably.
it something that it could very well be, but we might never know.
Yeah, interesting phenomena.
Exactly. And I think we're just at the hour now. We're waiting for your panelists to join, and then I will hand everything over to your capable hands, sir.
That's perfect. We're ready to go when you are. Looks like we have Erica, and then I think Tessin is here as well.
There we go.
There we go.
I'm gonna go mute and video off, but if you need me at all, I am here. Just shout.
Wonderful, excellent. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ben Tuine, and we are in the last and final stretch of this webinar today. So thanks for being patient with us, and hopefully the content shared so far has been helpful. While everybody's sort of gathering themselves from lunch or breaks, I'm just going to tell a quick story to lay the foundation of this next 1 hour segment, the insurance admin panel. So there was a 5-year-old boy, and he walks up to mom, curious as kids are, and asks mom, "Hey mom, where do human beings come from? Like where did we come from?" I think that's an honest question that a lot of us parents have been asked by our kids at some point in their lives. Mom, thinking of the safest answer to give her son, responded with this. He said, "Well, son, on Sunday we go to church and we read this thing called the Bible. And in the Bible, we learn that God put Adam and Eve on this earth, and Adam and Eve had kids and their kids had kids. And that pattern repeated for many, many years. And then my parents had me. Your dad's parents had him, and then your dad and I made you. That's how you came to be." Satisfied with the answer, the boy rushes out. But about 10 minutes later, he comes rushing back in a panic and said, "Mom, you totally lied to me. Dad said we were once chimps and monkeys, and this whole thing called evolution occurred over millions of years, which sort of allowed us to become the species that we are today." Mom put her arms around her little boy, kind of disappointed in dad's answer a little bit, and says, "Son, everything is going to be totally fine. I want to let you know that your dad is actually correct. But the difference is that he's talking about his side of the family." When you think about, and we're not going to talk anymore about any religious or, science or anything. Well, this is more of a scientific, somewhat of a scientific webinar. But we all have different opinions when it comes to just about everything. You take a word or a concept, like my language, I'm from Samoa, and words change over time, right? The definitions of words change. We add to those words, the words evolve. But everybody has a different opinion about a lot of things. And when it comes to insurance and dentistry, especially, the opinions about coding, billing, negotiating, all the things pertaining to how to operate insurance within a dental practice, they change. Well, everybody has different ways of doing things and different definitions on things. That's not necessarily all the same. In a roundabout way, there are a million ways to handle insurance in the dental practice. And what we're going to do today is talk about one of the themes is how to fight wage inflation with good billing practices. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce two of the most foremost experts with insurance. First, Tessina. Tessina, welcome to today's webinar. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, and let's have a nice discussion. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me.
We're going to get into your background here in a little bit, but I also want to introduce Erica. Erica is when it comes to coding, billing in dentistry, medical billing as well. She is definitely one of the best in the industry as it pertains to her knowledge set. So Erica, thanks for joining us today.
Always happy to be here. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, always, always. Well, let's get into it. So I have questions here. What I want to do first is answer questions from the attendees, the insurance related questions. But before we get into that, I just want to kind of do a round robin style of answering. So we'll start with you, Erica, first. Do you mind just introducing yourself and then telling us one thing from an insurance perspective that your successful clients are doing these days?
Yes, so my name's Erica Aguilar, and we have a dental billing company called Hidden Dental Profit. And we see a lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of how dental billing departments are structured, performing, and or lack thereof. We have a lot of insight from that perspective. One of the things that our most successful clients are doing, hands down, is going out of network. They are just ditching the contracts. And it's so liberating for them, and it helps them understand how to charge the patient, because when we're in network, figuring out which fee schedule to calculate benefits with can be a big challenge, and I can go into more detail about that later, but yeah, that's the short answer.
That's awesome. Going out of network, which I agree.
Yes.
We're going to talk about that. In fact, a lot of the questions that came in for the webinar are about out of network and how to assess it properly. So thank you for bringing that up, Erica.
Yes.
Well, we're gonna turn to you, Tessa, and I'm gonna ask the same question, just a brief intro, and then let us know what most of your successful clients are doing from an insurance perspective to maintain on top of the game.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm Tessina, and I've been in the insurance industry for a while and have the insurance verification services as well as some negotiations, and admin training, all the fun stuff. I've had opportunities to be in a lot of different offices in a lot of different settings. And over the years, right, the things have changed as far as what offices can do to become more successful or to help their production. And it used to be sometimes, adding services, adding days, all these things. But the most successful practices, I would have to agree with Erica, is the practices that go out of network and educate their patients on how to be, what is my wording here? How to be driven by their own oral health rather than insurance driven, right? So educating the patients, putting them in control of their oral health rather than just saying, hey, this is what your insurance covers. This is what we're allowed to do with your insurance company.
That's excellent. Excellent. Wonderful. Well, let's dive right into the questions here. We have one first question from Brittany. So her question is surrounding recommendations on dropping insurance versus asking for fee increase. Maybe Erica, we could maybe start with you and then get Tessina's feedback on that. So what are your recommendations on dropping insurance versus asking for a fee increase?
I think when I see offices that are like their hygiene departments are backed up 6 months or 4 months, really taking a look at what contracts are clogging up your schedule, and understanding it might be time to go out of network with those contracts. But I think strategically looking at how these the increase that you could potentially receive versus going out of network is definitely something I would look at before I make that decision.
Yeah, that's excellent. Tessina?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I would add to it, I mean, just to help clarify, I think what Erica is saying is it depends on the situation that your practice is in specifically. So we have offices that are, the doctor is purchasing a new practice with existing patients. We have offices with the doctors who are just getting their license and just starting out. And then we have offices that have been practicing for 20, 30 years. All of these doctors are all looking for the same thing, higher fees, right? But what is the best scenario? Is it in negotiating the fees or dropping and going out of network? And that would depend on what situation you're in currently and what is best for your office. Ultimately, I think everybody's agreeing these days, out of network is eventually the best route to go because you have all that freedom and none of those restrictions. So that is a great option, but sometimes it's not the best option depending on the situation you're in. If you're purchasing a practice with existing patients, sometimes you want to build those relationships before you jump to going out of network. So negotiating might be an option in that situation.
Perfect. Excellent. Yeah, I agree with you both. I like what I heard in the business panel from several of our business panel experts today. You know, out of network journeys is very lengthy. So to me, the ideal recommendation on dropping insurance is, of course, making an attempt to negotiate with all dental plans, assessing a few things in terms of your busyness, like Bob's client that he mentioned this morning. He had a client in New Mexico and they needed to lose patients. They needed patient attrition. There was no question they were booked so far out. Like when you're booked 8 months with your hygiene schedule, you naturally start to lose patients anyway, right? And a lot of those patients tend to go shopping around because they can't get in quickly enough for their hygiene appointments or their restorative treatment. So if you're in that bucket where you're busy, that's a really good time to start thinking about weeding out some of the less loyal patients. The top 4 dental plans in terms of the ease of going out of network to where team members can learn in a safe way the scripting, the processes of out of network. The top 4 dental plans, in my opinion, are MetLife, Aetna, Guardian, and Cigna. Why? Is because those 4 plans use Fair Health's 80th percentile to assess out-of-network benefits. And a lot of times the difference between in-network and out-of-network from a payment perspective is at like hygiene. You know, when you're in network on the hygiene side, you're writing off 50% on that hygiene appointment, right? When you submit that claim out of network, you capture that 50%. A lot of insurance, well, those 4 insurance plans, a lot of times, not all the time, but the majority of the patients have plans that pay 100% for preventative out of network. Well, 100% of what? Well, 100% of your office fees, so long as your office fees are at or below Fair Health's 80th percentile. So when you go through that journey, you know, the idea is not to drop all insurances at the same time. I mean, you could. It's very, very stressful, but like ladies, starting with 1 is probably a good idea, right? And using that as a training platform to train your train your team members and your patients to get used to a process that's going to be duplicated for the next set of PPOs. So while you're waiting to drop the others, negotiate with them. That's Brittany, that's sort of my personal recommendation on handle dropping insurance versus negotiating fees. Any other feedback, Erica and Tessina, before we move on?
I was going to say that, you know, that's part of the reason that we look at perio performance when we're analyzing how a billing department is doing. A lot of people are a little thrown off on why are you looking at my perio performance or hygiene performance? Because a lot of times when we find that perio performance percentage is low, we recommend that it's at 60% or higher. But when it's low, when we take a look at their schedule, a lot of times we find that it's that practice that's backed up 8 months, like you said. And that's when we recommend at that point, we might want to start taking a look at going out of network with some plans. I don't know, we need to be strategic about it. Obviously, we don't do that. So we send them over to Veritas. But, you know, it is very important that we look at all the moving parts that could suggest it's time to go out of network.
Absolutely. No, I love that. So you mentioned something that we're going to segue into the next question. This is kind of deeper into the line of questioning that I wanted to go into today, but you talked about hygiene, perio performance. So several of the questions that have come in are surrounding wages. It's like, you know, with wages going up, it's so hard to stay in network because fee increases haven't matched inflation and they never will. So, you know, so out of network, of course, is a great solution, but not every practice is ready to go out of network with dental plans, right? And those that are, it's going to be a long journey. Question is that how do you increase profitability within your hygiene department in an effort for doctors to accommodate current standard of wages in the industry? Maybe Erica, we can start with you, and then Tessina can follow up with some feedback there.
Yeah, that's a very loaded question there, Ben. But yeah, the way that we start is very simple. We start more accurately describing what we're doing by using codes that describe what we do. I'll give you an example of that. When a patient comes in for a prophy and we clean their partial denture, that is a reimbursable procedure. So, but a lot of times offices are leaving that off the table. We're not documenting it, we're not coding it, and it's not going to magically make it over to the claim form. So I think the easiest way is to start coding for what you are doing and getting reimbursed for what you're doing. And there's so many things, there's so many codes that are left off of our hygiene interactions that, you know, we are literally leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table for things that we are doing. I'm not talking about upselling the laser, though I do believe in the laser. This is not, I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about billable procedures that we could easily change the game in the hygiene department.
That's awesome. I want to go a little bit more deeper into that, Erica, in a second here, but Tessina, go ahead with your feedback before we expand on this particular topic.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Erica. We see that a lot in a lot of offices. And sometimes when offices want to look at coding and billing, they're saying like, well, look at my crowns, look at my implants. And there can be some discrepancies we find there, but the most of the time we find them is over in the hygiene section. There's a lot of work there that's being done that's not being billed out and capturable. But something I'd also like to mention is just that we have a lot of times that sometimes the hygienist will push back on being able to accomplish some of these perio goals. And we find that the office scheduling system is not set up in a way or that the front office hasn't supported the hygienist so that they know what their protocol is, what their options are, how the office would like them to handle that patient, and where they're going to fit this extra production into the schedule. If we're so heavily booked that the hygienist doesn't have time to do these thorough procedures and these thorough exams to even diagnose these procedures, it becomes a prophy mill, right, Erica? And they just try to get through it as quickly as they can. So instead of saying, let's fill our time and our chairs as fast and as much as possible with all these prophies, let's make time for the perio and let's treat the perio, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that because, you know, I often hear, like, especially through Erica and Jen, the hygiene coach that works with Erica, is that these days the standard of income in the hygiene chair, you know, full day for a single hygienist, like here in Utah, I mean, it ranges anywhere between what, Tessina, 600 to 1,200 a day, sometimes a little bit more. Would that be pretty accurate? And I hear from a lot of clients that get really good hygiene coaching on the billing and coding side of things and how that ties into the clinical, especially for the perio protocols, is that those hygienists produce 1,500 to 2,500 a day. Now, Erica, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you there. Why is that? Why is there such a big discrepancy with hygienists that have a hygiene focus, a perio focus, compared to the standard protocols in hygiene right now nationwide that drives less income in the hygiene chair? Like, why is that, and what recommendations you have there to get practices more to that, you know, $1,500 to $2,500 production day in the hygiene chair?
Yeah, I think, again, going back to the coding, more accurately describing what you're doing. For example, we've had offices that we look at that did, you know, over the past 18 months did 10,000 prophies because they have a whole hygiene department. I'm going to use this practice in particular as an example. And they only did like 63 gingivitis cleanings. You know, and when we look at and interview the hygienist or the hygiene team, they will agree that they probably did more gingivitis cleanings than prophies, but didn't know how to document for it, or just didn't have time, because sometimes we're giving them 40 minutes to educate, to do the cleaning, to take the x-rays, and it's just overwhelming for them. So there's a lot of burnt out hygienists out there. So I think we need to focus on, like what Tessina said, the schedule, like helping the hygienist out, supporting them to give them the time that's going to produce more in the long run. But again, going back to the coding, teaching our hygiene teams how to document for what they are actually doing. Like if we are giving, if we're doing some type of local anesthetic on number 12, because it's sensitive there, we need to document for that in a way that I as your biller can code for that and get you paid for that application of desensitization medicine, so that the patient could be comfortable during a prophy. We can get reimbursed for that. Or I think a biggie for a lot of offices where they're leaving opportunity on the table is not documenting for the, oh my gosh, it just escaped me, the caries risk assessment. I think a lot of hygiene departments are leaving the caries risk assessment off the table, but we can bill for that. There is a way, there are certain steps that you need to take in order to bill for a caries risk assessment. The documentation does need to look a certain way. But I mean, again, teaching our hygiene teams to document for what they're doing, because they are doing these things. We're not asking them to do anything different. So even if you have a tight schedule, you're doing these things, I want you to get reimbursed for that. So that's first and foremost. And then understanding perioconversion, taking that prophy patient taking the patient from a bloody prophy over to a gingivitis patient, and having them take responsibility for what's going on in their mouth by explaining to the patient what you see in there, and not making the patient feel like we're switching it up on them to make more money. Because I think a lot of patients feel like that. Well, why have I been coming in for a regular cleaning for 5 years and now you're telling me I need a different cleaning? You know, so there's so much, and very, very simple steps that we can take to help our hygienists get credit for what they're actually doing, and not overwhelm them with more things to do to make more in the hygiene department.
I love it. Love it. What I'm looking for on my computer here is the description for that gingivitis cleaning code. Yes. That the ADA put out. So if anybody's curious, it's code 4346. Is that right? Yeah. And one of the things that I hear repeatedly around the country, many practices try to submit 4346, and that gets downgraded to a prophy, and then the patient has to pay 20% for that prophy, right? Instead of it being covered at 100%.
I have it right here, Ben. So yeah. The descriptor for the gingivitis cleaning, as I was talking about, is the removal of plaque calculus and stains from supra and subgingival tooth surfaces when there is generalized, moderate, or severe gingival inflammation in the absence of periodontitis. And that's really the key factor there that Jen will hone in on when she's coaching a team and helping them to understand the key differences between a healthy prophy patient, as she calls it, versus your gingivitis patient. Oh, perfect. And she emphasizes that, you know, red puffy gums, 30% or more bleeding throughout the mouth, not just the lower anteriors. And that's no bone loss, no attachment loss. And that's going to qualify that patient to be classified as a gingivitis patient. Now, a lot of the questions that we get, Tess, I'm sure you know this, we've had extensive conversations about insurance around this code. A lot of the plans will pay for a gingivitis cleaning twice a year. Some will alternate with a prophy, some, you know, so there's a lot of benefit to incorporating this. And most of the time, you will get paid more for the gingivitis cleaning. There are plans that will downgrade to a prophy, but it doesn't, we're still going to charge the patient and bill for what we're doing.
Yeah, that's excellent. you had mentioned that practice that had the 10,000 pro fees. You know, I think if 4346 is at a 0 or like a less than 1%, what is the ideal target in terms of a safe percentage based upon numbers? Like, what would you set as a goal in terms of your, yeah.
Okay, so specifically for 4346?
Yes.
Okay, so we know that, I don't know, I think conservatively, we recommend that at least 30%, if we look at documentation over the past 18 months, we have found that at least 30% of those pro fees would have qualified for gingivitis cleanings if we look at intraoral photos, if they have them, and that's a very conservative number. But that's really what we're looking at. Some areas have higher gingivitis and perio than others, but when we see offices that are doing, you know, let's just something a lot more realistic for a single practice, single hygienist office, they're probably doing about 2,500 pro fees every 18 months, and at least 20% of those were probably gingivitis cleanings. Wow. And that's based on us looking at offices, hundreds and hundreds of offices all over the country, and you know, in speaking with the hygienists and the doctors. I mean, I've had doctors say that's all of our patients. I have one office that we're working with currently, and they do more gingivitis cleanings than pro fee.
Yeah, that's crazy. You know, so you add this gingivitis code, like for that practice that did 10,000 pro fees in a year. If you were at 40%, excuse me, 30%, that's $420,000. At 20% utilization for 4346, that's $280,000. The difference between a pro fee reimbursement and a D4346 reimbursement sometimes could be as high as $80 above the pro fee, right? So when you ask the question, how do I be more profitable, especially in the hygiene department? To me, this is a necessary code to explore if it's not currently being used. One final tip is that I always hear that 4346, in order for it to actually get paid and not downgraded, you have to submit perio charting. Is that accurate, Erica?
Yes, you want to submit a complete, and I want to emphasize complete perio chart, not just the probing depths, or the pocket depths. We find I get a lot of feedback from individuals who, when I say incorporate 4346, a lot of times I will hear, well, it just gets downgraded, so we just bill a pro fee. A, that's billing to benefit, that's not billing for what you do. And B, show me the perio chart that you used, because a lot of times if it's incomplete, they will downgrade it to a pro fee. It needs to indicate that there's no bone loss, no attachment loss, bleeding sites, a full complete perio chart.
That's awesome. Now, Tessina, the next question is going to be for you regarding negotiating fees, but do you have anything else to chime in on this code 4346?
I don't think so. I think she nailed it.
Yeah. I think so too. Erica always does an amazing job at explaining things. So thank you for that, Erica.
Thank you.
So for our attendees on the screen here, this is actually from the American Dental Association. So if you're interested to learn more about this particular code and how to use it, Google D4346, American Dental Association, and then this will be the first thing that'll pop up on your screen. I want to pivot now to the next question here. Well, there are actually several questions that came in regarding negotiating fees. So let me just try to maybe ask a consolidated question here. When it comes to negotiating fees with insurance, Tessina, what should doctors do to increase their effectiveness in successfully getting fee increases?
Yes, this is a big one. I always get asked about, and we see it a lot when we're negotiating fees, that offices have been billing the contracted rate for a really long time, and then they want to get a fee increase, and they're not understanding why they can't get their fees increased, or when they go to increase them, why they can't get as high as somebody else near them has been able to get. Huge no-no. If you're still doing this, I feel like I've been preaching this for years. I don't know. But we are still finding, and one of the culprits I have to say is Dentrix. Dentrix puts the contracted fee into the ledger, and there is a way you can still submit your full office fee, even though you have the contracted rate in the ledger, but some offices weren't aware in that default setting or something, and it hasn't been going out that way. It's been going out as a contracted fee, and it's been handed down from one person to another, and nobody ever knew. Please take a minute, make sure that your full UCR fees are going out to the insurance company. But what if your UCR fees aren't in the 80th percentile, right, Ben? So we have to not just be submitting those fees, we have to make sure that those fees are within the right range so that the insurance company will be able to provide you with a reimbursement rate that is reasonable. If you're submitting close to that contracted rate, you're still at the same problem where they don't think that you need an increase because you're saying that's your overhead, that's all you need to collect. And they are going to reduce your office fee by 30% on average, sometimes 50%. If we're some of them are really awful, but on average, it's probably about 30% decrease from your UCR fee. So your UCR fee needs to be positioned above that so that when you're getting that reimbursement rate, it's a reasonable rate.
That's awesome. So where do you go if you want to do a fee assessment? What's your recommendation there? A fee assessment as it pertains to setting the fees the right way to position yourself to negotiate effectively, right? Simple math, you know, if insurance carriers' maximum reimbursements are at the 40th percentile, but your office fees are at the 35th percentile, naturally you want to raise that, right? But it's hard to know. It's hard to know how to have that fine balance there in terms of standard office fees. What's your recommendation there? And we'll circle around and ask Erica the same question, but go ahead, Tessina.
Yeah, there's a lot of different methods that can be used. There's the NDA, what is that? The National Dental Advisory, right? They have a listing for your zip code of what the fees are for your area. I think you have to pay a fee for that though, right, Ben? So if you sign up with a negotiating company like Veritas, they provide that for you. They have access to that information. So using a company to help negotiate those fees will also show you where to position your fees at. There are some other methods that I've seen used that aren't bad. They're at least somewhere to start. You can go through your software, your own fee schedules that you have for your insurance company and make sure your UCR fees are at least 30 to 40% higher than your highest fee schedule. So it's free, it's simple, you can do it on your own. Do you know if you're right for your zip code? Probably not, but at least you're positioning them much higher than your insurance contracts currently. So when you go to negotiate, it will show that you're due for an increase. I also like fairhealthconsumer.org. It's a free service as long as you use it limitedly. I love this service. Some of the insurance companies are using this fee guide. But when you go to this, you can just spot check a few codes here and there in order to keep it at the free service. And it'll tell you again by zip code what the cash pay price is. And I have found so many offices are like, I can't charge that in my area. And we pull up the fairhealthconsumer.org and they are shocked to find that they are well below what the other offices in the zip code are charging for even their cash pay price.
Yeah. Yeah, Fair Health is great. So if everybody goes to the chat, you can get that website right there. If you go to Fair Health, it shows you on the free search, it shows you the 80th percentile fee, as well as the average allowed amount in that particular zip code. And how that ties to negotiations is that Fair Health is the only one that does that. Is they'll let you know what the average reimbursements are for any given code. If you're getting less on a dental, especially on a dental plan that does negotiate, that should trigger at least a process to say, hey, this is one that we most certainly have to raise and negotiate at a higher level simply because they're below the averages. Even though we all know how averages work, I always use that and it works in an effort to get insurance carriers to raise fees. Erica, any thoughts on any follow-up to that question?
No, Tess nailed it.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of medical billing questions that have come through. so let's, this is the perfect webinar for that because Erica's your girl for that kind of stuff. You know? So for medical billing, what do you recommend in terms of exploring it from the perspective of being able to learn it and be successful implementing it?
I think first and foremost, we need to understand, and this is going to be the medical billing instructor in me coming out. I think first and foremost, we need to start from the ground up. Don't jump in and try and cross code and go buy that big diagnosis book. I think first and foremost, we need to understand how out-of-network benefits work for dentists, how medical insurance is going to perform for a dentist, because a dentist is going to be, in most cases, out of network, and how those benefits apply to the procedures that we want to bill. Out of network billing in medical is very different from dental. So we want to first understand out of network benefits.
Yeah, that's awesome. I always hear that credentialing as an out-of-network provider on medical is best. Is that also an opinion that you agree with?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We can ask for, I just came across this scenario yesterday. We have a patient who is wanting us oral sleep appliance, but their medical insurance only has out-of-network benefits. But you can ask for a one-time exception for in-network benefits. The dentist will get paid as an in-network provider, but the benefit will be provided to the patient on a one-time out-of-network basis exception due to medical necessity. So you can always ask for those in-network benefits for scenarios when, say, the out-of-network deductible is like $8,000 and the in-network deductible is $1,500. Then we might want to ask for that exception to help the patient out financially as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just was talking to a client that does a lot of implants in Colorado, and he got a fee schedule from Blue Cross Blue Shield. Sounds like he's credentialed as an in-network provider. And the only reason why I did that is because, like, on a bone graft, like the reimbursement for, well, the allowance for a bone graft was $4,700. And the Delta allowance for bone graft was $600,
Yes.
and it's kind of puzzling. It's like, why are these fees so different? But my experience in medicine is that the fees in medicine as it pertains to dental procedures are significantly higher, right? Yeah.
But the difference, the main thing with medical insurance, and it's really, this is where the technique comes in, your ability to prove medical necessity. How is this procedure affecting overall health? Does the patient have comorbidities or risk factors, diabetes, high blood pressure, medications they're on? It's very different from dental billing, but it's not hard, it's just different. And in anything that you do with medical billing, they just want to know what is the medical necessity. Got it. If you can't prove that, you're not going to get paid.
Gotcha. So last follow-up question on medical billing is, I see a question here from Donna. So can you bill medical as secondary?
Dental will always be primary. If the plan requires that unless the plan is requiring that you bill medical first, then they're not asking you, I think there's a very common misconception. They're not asking you to know what code to bill that. I'm just going to say extraction as an example. Say the patient has MetLife dental TPO primary, and then MetLife says, we want you to bill their medical insurance first. Again, it's a delay tactic. I will be very open and honest about that. They're delaying the inevitable. They're delaying the payment. So they're asking you to send it to medical so that they have more time to hold on to those premiums, and they want you to get that denial. What I do to get the quickest denial back is, unless you actually want to bill medical, most likely they're not going to cover it, or the deductible is going to be too high and it's just going to get eaten up by the deductible. I would just send a dental claim to the medical insurance to get that denial. I get a denial and then I bill to the dental.
That's awesome. What about Medicaid? I see another question here, same question. Billing Medicaid billing as secondary, is that a possibility?
No. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Awesome. Well, thanks for the explanation there on medical billing. I highly recommend if you want to explore medical billing as an attendee, just go to contact Erica. She can
Yeah.
sort of walk you through those steps. It's a complex world. A lot of people give up so easily on medical, mainly because it's very difficult to initiate the processes to get started. But once you do, it makes a big difference in terms of profitability. Okay, oh, sorry, Erica. Any final thoughts before we move on
Nope.
medical billing? Okay. Okay, here's another one that's actually tied to the theme. The coding for insurance and PPO plans and the fraud and how we could get more money without getting into fraud. So how do we maximize our coding and just insurance game in general without engaging in fraud? And I think the main areas of fraud, of course, overbilling, that's probably the #1 issue that's happening in dentistry these days, is submitting for codes that weren't performed, or upcoding, right? 2 surfaces being submitted to insurance as 4 surfaces, as an example. What areas of insurance strategy, and this is for both you, Tessina, and Erica. We'll start you with Tessina, first with Tessina. What do you recommend that's considered relatively safe but yet aggressive forms of insurance practices or policies or billing strategies in an effort to build revenue, but avoiding that whole world of committing insurance fraud? How do you balance that? Well, #1 is just don't do fraud, but how do you, what recommendations do you have
Please.
there? Go ahead, Tessa. You
Oh
first.
yeah, me. Okay. That's a loaded question. Wow. Okay. So there's a lot of strategies. I think you said first and foremost, don't fraudulently bill. Make sure you're billing for what you're coding for. But Erica's talked about this already. Bill for what you do, code for what you do. So just because the insurance might be trying to say that it's bundled or that this service is included, that's not always the case. And if you're doing those services, I have run into offices that provide bone grafts and they just do a little bit of a bone graft. So they don't bill it out. Why? Why aren't we billing it out? Why aren't we getting covered for that? So if you're doing these services and you're providing them, make sure that you know the codes available around your other codes. So sometimes there's supporting codes. The PRF, I don't know if a lot of offices are doing this. I'm hoping more and more offices are using the PRF when they're doing extractions or surgeries, and there are codes for these. Sometimes there's only 1 code being billed when there's 2 or 3 that could be getting billed. So just familiarize yourself with those codes available and bill them. Also be aware of the non-covered services law and your options to bill for services that are not covered, where you can bill at your full fee. And that is a really big world that has to be done precisely in order for it to be done legally, but it's fantastic. So if that is not a covered service, you can bill your full fee and be receiving that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, billing full fee for non-covered services is huge. In a minute, we're going to talk about the next question, which is upgrades. We'll talk about the legality of that, but I appreciate what you mentioned there, Tess, and I agree with what you said there. Erica, any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, don't bill for benefit, bill for what you do. You'll probably get paid more if you bill for what you're doing. But you got to know what you got to know. You got to know what you got to know in terms of your codes. Don't follow along with these preconceived notions about what you can and can't bill. You can bill for the things you are doing. I'm not a big advocate of putting everything on the claim form. Like a lot of people will say, you have to put everything on the claim form. I think that's going to lead into the next discussion, Ben, right? But there are things that we can do that don't run the risk of the insurance companies telling us that we can't charge the patient, and don't bill for benefit, bill for what you do. And you will make more in the long run and be compliant.
That's excellent. I want to dive into the material fees here in a second, but we do have some questions coming in that I've unintentionally been not ignoring since the until now. So Brittany writes, what are other PRF codes?
Oh, the other PRF codes. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I can get them over to you guys. So there's like the collection code and the delivery code. And there's another one, and I can never think of it off the top of my head, but I will look into that and I can send that out to you guys. But there are a handful of codes that you can build together with that. So I have a lot of offices that aren't billing for the PRF at all, or they're only billing the one code. And I know when I've gone through this before that there is definitely more than just the one code that could be billing, and don't not bill for it. If you're doing that service, and I love that service, I think it gives the patient a much better result and much better healing process. So I think we should be using it and we should be billing for it.
Absolutely. And then the last follow-up question on that PRF from Monera. Are you talking about PRF being billed to dental?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, good. Excellent. Let's shift gears now and talk about several questions regarding material fees. So first question, is it even legal to bill for a material fee if you're in network with a patient's insurance plan? And the one thing that we've learned when it comes to material fees, actually, let me pull up a different consent form, is that you most certainly can bill for material fees. Unfortunately, there was an article put out in a very popular dental magazine a couple of months ago that says, no, you can't. But in the same article, it did refer to the fact that even as in-network providers, there are loopholes. And this person was advocating to not take advantage of those loopholes. And I don't really understand the logic behind that, because when if any of you do your taxes on your own, or at least have a CPA, if you're not engaging in a tax mitigation strategy, you're paying way too much in taxes. It's not considered unethical or fraudulent to take advantage of loopholes. Loopholes are there designed to give us breathing room, right? To allow us to have things that we don't have now and acquire them legally. So when it comes to material fees, I'm a big believer that we must consider adding material fees. And I recommend starting with the basics. This is actually a gold consent form here, but so in the realm of Emacs and Zirconia, so this is a consent form. If anybody wants to take it, at least get a copy of this, just send us an email. I'd be happy to share this particular consent form with you. But this section here says the material fees are considered a non-covered service, and as such will not be billed to insurance, but billed to you directly. You have a legal right to obtain these services that are above and beyond the scope of what insurance covers if you choose to invest in higher quality services on your own and outside of the limitations of insurance coverage. So in a way, when we look at Emacs and Zirconia, very, very strong crown. Emacs, a beautiful aesthetic crown, right? But even these days, Zirconia crowns are just aesthetically pleasing as Emacs. And so the question becomes, how can you legally bill for a material fee? Well, one thing that we have to keep in mind is that cosmetics on crowns are not covered, and yet we give them away for free. So what you're charging the patient in terms of a material fee is not a lab fee. Almost every insurance contract prohibits lab fees. So you have to come up with a fee that is truly justifiable. Like for this particular practice, they do $149 for Zirconia, and then they do $199 for Emacs. The crown that I got last year, my material fee was $250 on number 7. And the reason why I decided that I wanted to pay that is because the doctor had a CEREC machine. I was able to go in 2 hours, done. Go home and not have to come back for a second appointment. To me, it was worth it. There was value. And that's the key thing when it comes to material fees is, how is this more valuable than what insurance covers? And if patients understand that, it is so easy to get patients to agree to pay for a material fee. In fact, among the practices that we track, the case acceptance on the material fees is above 95%. Some practices, it's 99%. You're always going to have a patient that's not going to want to do it. For those patients, my personal policy is that we're just going to waive it, rather than changing the kind of crown that you do that you may not be comfortable with. I wouldn't skirt on the edge of ethics, personal ethics, as it pertains to your quality standards. Most of our clients just waive the fee, and that goes a long way with patients that need the crowns but may have a true legitimate financial concern. Anything to add there, Tessin or Erica, on material fees and upgrades?
No, I think that a lot of offices just need to know about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
More offices need to know about this. I mean, it's just so prevalent, Ben, that they're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z because we're in-network providers, and they don't understand the power of the material fees and how to properly implement this into the practice.
Yeah, you have to go about it very carefully. With material fees, maybe we need to talk about the laws that would protect a practice. Number one, now this is not legal advice. This is just speculation. This is advice that we get from our attorneys all the time. So always make sure that you vet this out with your own set of attorneys. Number one, if you're in a state that has a non-covered service law, you're golden, simply because material fees are considered not covered by insurance plans. Number two, there's a law called the High-Tech Act, a federal law applicable in all 50 states, that essentially states that a patient can sign an insurance waiver to obtain any medical services. And if an insurance waiver is signed, the practice has no legal right to share that information with anybody except for the patient, not the patient's insurance, not the patient's spouse, not the patient's children. And that's the beauty of that law, is that it gives you some level of protection that if you're ever audited, it's illegal for you to share high-tech protected information with the patient's insurance. The patient can, but because the patient had that transactional agreement with you directly, that you are bound by law to not disclose that fee or not disclose that procedure code outside of the patient. Alrighty, so let's move on. We only have a few minutes here, so I'm gonna kind of tap into a few things here in terms of insurance. Well, diagnosis codes is actually one that I wanted to ask Erica. So Sarah asked, can you explain diagnosis codes and the implementation of those on both the medical and dental side?
So diagnosis codes are starting to become a requirement in dental billing. I have a dental billing company, and we have started to see those denials come in for lack of diagnosis codes since 2023. The first one that we saw was for fillings, and it was from Cigna. And I still have that EOB because I was like, oh, wow, it's happening. And now we're starting to see them more and more. So diagnosis code is, in dentistry, we tend to follow the trends of medical billing. And in medical billing, you submit a diagnosis code telling the reason why, what is the diagnosis, and then what you do. What did you do to treat it? So the diagnosis code is there to better tell the story as to why. When insurance companies start to require, like the main commercial plans start to require this, the intention is for the diagnosis code to eventually replace narratives and sometimes x-rays. And again, following the trends of medical billing. So medical billing is already implemented since the beginning of time diagnosis codes. Dental has had a slow pace in catching up with medical. However, in 2012, the American Dental Association started urging us to put diagnosis codes on the claim. In fact, there is an area on the 2024 claim form for us to start placing those diagnosis codes, because they see what's coming down the pike here. These insurance plans are going to start to require diagnosis codes, and I'm encouraging people to become early adopters of implementing diagnosis codes on their claim form. How do you do that? Every practice management software has the ability to place diagnosis codes on a claim, on a dental claim. Some plans will require that you reach out to the plan and say, I need you to activate, for lack of a better term, activate our diagnosis codes, because they're just not showing up when you do an exam or when you're trying to bill and tell the story as to why you needed the crown. So sometimes you need to contact your software to get those codes activated. But in the perfect world where the diagnosis code would be added, the diagnosis code would be added in the exam. So as the doctor is saying, number 9 RCT built-up crown, due to decay or whatever reason, then in addition to highlighting that tooth and then root canal post build-up crown, you would also attach a diagnosis code in the exam. So that's in a perfect world, and that's a whole other training and conversation with the clinical team when we're implementing diagnosis codes.
That's
So
awesome.
that's my short, long answer to that.
No, that's good. That's good. And we only have a couple of minutes here, so we're going to wrap up maybe with just this last question. And I apologize we didn't get to everybody's question. There are some that are coming through the chat, and we'll try to identify your emails to get you the answers to you individually for the ones that we didn't address today. So final question, we'll start with you, Tessina, here. You're sort of the queen of appeals and queen of, when it comes to educating people on how to use the state insurance commissioner. So Maureen asks, how do we get insurance companies to pay claims when you can't use the state insurance commissioner? And I believe that Maureen is referring to self-funded plans that have no jurisdiction within the state, right? What's your feedback there, Tessina?
Yeah, so your insurance commissioner should be providing you the phone number for the federal department to file that complaint on the federal level. I definitely recommend calling that number. Every state or every area is different for who handles that federal case as to how they want that handled. But calling them and getting them involved, and they usually want the patient involved as well. So when you're going the federal route, make sure your patient is on board and ready to tackle this with you. But more so, if you send that to the insurance commissioner first without disclosing that it's a self-funded plan, I hope they're not, insurance commissioners not listening, they hate this now. If you send it first without disclosing that it's a self-funded plan, the insurance commissioner's office sends it to the insurance company saying, hey, we have this complaint. And it goes to the highest level of those departments, people who are in charge of getting these claims and these complaints resolved. So their response to the commissioner might be, you don't have jurisdiction over this, but they know that now you're going to be notified of the next steps to do the federal complaint. So a lot of times they will go ahead and get that claim resolved. As long as they pay that claim, you don't have a complaint to file against them. So they want to hurry and clean that up before you go to the federal government department for those complaints and getting the patient involved. So that is an area that you can try to utilize as well.
That's excellent. I think in your safety net is that the vast majority of the time, we don't even know if the patient has a self-funded plan or not until we submit it to the insurance commissioner and they do their own investigation, right? Sometimes you know, most of the times you don't. But I agree with Tessina, is just continue to use the insurance commissioner if you can. Erica, what's your advice on effective appeals when we can't use the state insurance commissioner?
Go to the patient's get the patient involved, as Tessina said, but you can also go to the HR, the subscriber's HR, make them aware that the plan that they are using or the insurance company that they're using to administer the benefits is denying the benefits that they're paying for. And usually their HR benefit manager will get involved and help out. But taking it to the federal level is probably the best thing to do. So I would go to HR if that was like the last stitch effort. But definitely, if I've heard in workshops that I've hosted when we talk about this topic, we had one lady, Tessina, I think I told you about her. She just kept insisting that she had a self-funded plan. Insurance commissioner didn't want to get involved and she didn't know where to go next. There was no number on the letter. And the way she resolved that was by doing what you said, which was picking up the phone and calling the insurance commissioner to get the number to take it to a federal level. So last I heard, that's what she did. And I haven't heard since. So I'm hoping that it was resolved.
Yeah, every insurance commissioner is different in every state. As far as I've seen some that are really, really good and they want to nail those insurance companies, and others who are a little bit more relaxed. But you're working with a department that has several different employees. Getting on the phone with the insurance commissioner's office and sometimes asking for somebody higher up at the commissioner's office will push to help get these issues resolved for you.
That's awesome. And folks, we are out of time. We really appreciate you attending today. A gift that we want to offer to all attendees, as Tessina mentioned earlier today, if you want to do that NDAS, like know where your office fees are, just know that we're throwing in a freebie there. All we need is just an email from you and your zip code, and we can pull that report and send it to you through email in a PDF document. So take advantage of that. And then finally, you just want to thank everybody for being here today. Really appreciate our guests who showed up and produced a very awesome webinar. Thank you for all your support. Check out insuranceuNtangled.com to stay in the loop for our next series of webinars. We will always have an insurance panel as well as increasing the panelists, and that way we get some awesome opinions from other industry experts. Not saying that Tessa and Erica are boring or anything like that or uneducated. We just have so much fun when we have a nice, strong panel. We can just bounce ideas to provide solutions for those that attend. So until next time, we wish everybody a wonderful weekend. Best of success in your practices. Stay healthy, stay warm, have fun this season. Take care, everybody.